Can I just say, like, Magnolia Parks girls are the most patient girls in the world. I know it's been a while since I last posted a Magnolia Parks video, but I said in the last video you would get all of them before Daisy Hates 3 came out, and we have had no announcement on Daisy Hates 3, so like I haven't felt the need to scurry and hurry. If this is your first video here, you're in the wrong spot. This is video, I believe, 3, maybe even 4 in my recap series on these books. So let's jump right in. We jump right in. We're at like a really fun spot to jump right in. We are on New Year's Eve. It's the New Year's Eve party. So welcome to 2026. I don't know what year this book is taking place in. I think it's like 2016 maybe. I think somewhere Jessa has said like the official like dates of these books and when they take place, but I do think we're in like the 20 teens. Anyway, let's get into things. Okay. It's New Year's Eve. Obviously, Julian is throwing a New Year's Eve party. They're legendary. Of course, we know this about Julian's New Year's Eve party. BJ is going with Jordan, his girlfriend. Lest you forget, he has an Australian girlfriend that he doesn't like very much for a large portion of this book. But obviously he's going to see Magnolia. Like, his goal is to see Magnolia. They had like a falling out. They like were almost back together. And then Magnolia like needed some space, and BJ, while that space was occurring, went home and slept with his girlfriend instead of breaking up with her. Dummy. Bless his sweetheart. Anyway, he gets there. He like goes and sees everyone else. Magnolia's not with the rest of the box set. And the boys are all mad at him. Like, no one is really talking to him right now because they're so mad. They like thought we were done. They thought we like settled everything. We thought that they were back together, Jordan and BJ, like, or not Jordan, Magnolia and BJ. And BJ went and messed up again. And Joe comes over to BJ and is like, hey, bud, we need to talk about Magnolia. And BJ is like, I don't want to hear it. Like, I don't want to talk about her. And Joe's like, no, you need to hear this. And BJ is like, no, I like know that Magnolia messed up too. You guys never blame her for this. It's always just my fault. But like, because she has you wrapped around her fingers, but like, she is just equally as to blame in this situation. And Joe is like, no, you don't understand, BJ. You sleeping with Jordan for Parks, that was Pearl Harbor. And Christian comes up and says, Hiroshima is coming. That's right. And BJ's like, whatever, Christian. Like, as long as you don't sleep with her, I'm good. And then Jonah passes him a glass of whiskey and says, you're going to need this. Because as BJ goes back to Jordan, he's kind of explaining the party and, like, who Julian is. Julian arrives at the top of the stairs. He's zipping up a girl into her dress, like, clear what activities they were just doing. And it takes BJ a second because he, like, just, like, does not even comprehend that it could be his girl up at the top of the stairs to realize, Julian is with Magnolia. And Julian comes downstairs and immediately goes to BJ and says, Happy New Year, bruv. And just like grins at him. Because like Julian knows what he's here to do. And that is to upset BJ. And then Julian introduces himself to Jordan because at the end of the day, Julian is a gentleman. And then BJ is talking to Tara and he's like, I need you to take Jordan away so I can go talk to Magnolia, like go distract her, give her a tour of the house or something. And Tara like doesn't want to, but eventually she agrees. And he essentially comes up to Magnolia and he's like, what the heck, Magnolia? And Magnolia is like wearing black, which is very un-Magnolia like. Okay, she's making a statement with her outfit. Obviously this is how girly communicates. And BJ comments on the fact that she's like wearing black and that like it's very different for her. And Magnolia says, I'm different. And BJ says, you're dating a gang lord now, literally the most dangerous man in England. And Magnolia says, I disagree. And then she goes back to Julian. She takes his drink, tosses it back. It's a glass of, I think we're told like 4,000 pound, 2,000 maybe? I think only 2,000 pound scotch. He's like, easy there. And he calls her Tigs, as in like tiger. So Tiggs. I think he calls her Tiggs, but I like Tigs better. So unfortunately, I think Jessa Hastings has clarified that it's Tiggs, as in like tiger, which I guess makes sense, but like Tiggs is cuter and it's still short for tiger. They wind up going up to the roof. Julian winds up pulling like the whole crew up onto the roof. BJ, Parks, Jonah, Henry, Tara, Christian, Julian, Daisy, Tiller, and Jordan. They all go up to the roof together. And BJ is talking to Jonah and he is annoyed because Jonah said that like Magnolia was fine. She wasn't in danger, but like Magnolia is dating a gang lord, like definition of danger. And Jonah's like, hey, I'm a gang lord too. And he explains like typically I would be on your side, except you slept with Jordan. So they go up to the roof. They're like sitting in this little circle to be in the elevator, which how big is this elevator where BJ and Jonah are able to have a full side conversation? Whatever. BJ's like, how are you letting her date a gang lord? This is dangerous. And Jonah's like, I am a gang lord also. Didn't know you had anything against gang lords because like your BFFs this one. And Jonah's like, honestly, I would probably be on your side, except you slept with Jordan. So you've actually lost all rights to like any sense of morality in this arrangement. Anyway, they get up on the roof and they like sit in a little circle. Tiller asks Julian like how long him and Magnolia have been together. Magnolia is sitting in Julian's lap, obviously. And he has his hands like halfway up her skirt. And Julian says, oh, like 74 hours then. And then BJ tries to convince Jordan to leave, but she's like, it's literally not even midnight yet. And also like it wouldn't be a good look. Okay. And then we get this party from Julian's perspective as well. And we learn that like Magnolia has not left his house since she texted him to pick her up, which I talked about last video. And we get the sense that like immediately Julian is falling for this girl. She fell asleep before I did, facing in towards me, and maybe I watched her for a couple seconds. Wonder how someone gets a face like that. Wonders how much a bottom lip has to weigh to part from the top one the way hers does. Thought about how many times over the years I've propositioned her. How many times she laughed it off and said no, but here I am, lying next to Everest herself. If I'm honest, I always thought that the second I had her, the spell would wear off. The fascination with her would dissipate into the oblivion of all my other conquests. I was sure that most of her allure would dry up the second we slept together. But we have now, and here's the part I don't know what to do with. I'm still wrapped with her, annoyingly so. He's like obsessed with her. He's like literally so obsessed with her. And the next morning she gets up, she leaves. She's like, hey, I have a massage booked for New Year's to like get me ready for the party. Like, gotta go. And he's like, we could bring a masseuse to the house. What do you mean? We can have someone come here. And Magnolia's like, well, I also like need to head to the gym. And Julian's like, we have a gym here. And she's like, well, I work with a trainer normally. And he's like, I can train you. like, girl, could you be a little sneakier, my beloved? And then Magnolia's like, do you not want me to go? And he's like, I mean, like, whatever, do whatever you want. Like, but anyway, she doesn't leave. She leaves briefly to go get herself an outfit for New Year's. And then we catch back up to the party and we kind of like see what happened from Julian's perspective. The party had kind of started and he saw Magnolia talking to Tara. Julian is like, come upstairs with me. And Magnolia's like, with company present? And he's like, do you want me to get them all to leave? Like, I want you upstairs, whatever we need to do to get that to happen. And Magnolia like laughs and obviously doesn't make everyone leave and just goes upstairs with Julian. And when they're upstairs, they're like chatting back and forth and they like exchange their body count for some reason. This comes like multiple times like in this chunk. I'm like, you guys are weird. And like, this comes up so often. I guess they are sleeping together, so, like, it's a less weird conversation. Magnolia says she slept with 8 people, like, ever. And Julian says, I slept with that many people in the last 2 weeks. And they have a conversation about what she's like in bed, and Magnolia admits that she's, like, really nervous with him. And Julian's like, what are you nervous about me for? BJ and Jonah had always said if I was in danger and I couldn't find them, that I should come find you. And Julian says, I don't think they meant like this. And Magnolia says, I don't suppose they did. And Julian says, you did find me, though. And you don't have anything to be nervous of. It's so cute. Guys, like, not for one single second have I not been a Magnolia and BJ truther. Okay? Like, I believe these two are written in the stars. Like, time and space itself could not separate these two. But nothing makes me kick my little feet like a Julian Magnolia together chapter. Like, it gives me butterflies. Like, if I'm in a coma, somebody read me the chapters that are in Julian's perspective about him dating Magnolia, and it'll wake me right up. Like, it'll bring me back to life. Anyway, they like hook up. Magnolia gets herself ready again to go back down for the party. And then that's when we see that scene from BJ's perspective. Oh, before they go out, they say Magnolia is like clearly nervous about seeing BJ for the first time. And she's like still like very much hurting over what BJ did to her. Julian is like resisting the impulse to like comfort her. He like wants to like hold her and like, you know, stroke her and like tell her everything's gonna be fine. And he's like, that's not what we're doing. We're not dating. We're just hooking up. Like, calm down. And Julian like compliments her and then like tells her she like is really beautiful. She shouldn't have anything to like worry about because she is so beautiful. And Magnolia says this, people say things like that to me quite often, like being beautiful is a personality trait. She glares up at me. I like it when she goes defiant, like it's all that I am. My eyes pinch, interested. You don't like it? She crosses her arms over her bare chest. I think it makes it easier for people to treat me like I'm not a real person. You think BJ doesn't treat you like you're a real person? Magnolia, I think that he thinks that me being beautiful will absorb the brunt of his repeated rejections, but all it has done is show me that my beauty is worth nothing in the end. And Julian says to her, okay, should we go back downstairs? And she like breathes through her nose as like Julian says to her, we should go back downstairs. And Magnolia says, what if he's down there? And Julian is like, yeah, he probably will be. Her eyes go bigger, all nervous, and I grab her by the waist again, ducking until we're eye to eye. Knives out, remember? I give her a look. We're making him bleed. And so that is the moment we get between Julian and Magnolia before they appear at the top of the staircase. Like, Julian is here to make BJ bleed because he does not like that Magnolia is so hurt. He hates to see it. Then we get New Year's from Daisy's perspective, and things are not going well between her and Tiller. And we get this like moment from earlier in the day in which Julian had come into their bedroom in the morning and he'd gone out for coffee and he had brought Daisy and Tiller a coffee, and he knows Tiller's coffee order. And Tiller is like very uncomfortable with this because of how much it just seems like he's like slotted into this house, and he like does not feel comfortable being in this like house of criminals. Ugh. Tiller in this chunk is truly the worst, and as a girly who like loves Tiller, like Tiller is my favorite of Daisy's, or one of my, I like have always said Tiller is my favorite. This section he is like absolutely not, but I really do really like Tiller as a character. I think he's really gorgeous and great for Daisy. This is a section which is he sucks. Okay, he does. Tiller heads out on a run, and so Daisy pops into Julian's room where he's in bed with Magnolia. And Magnolia offers to pick out Daisy's outfit for New Year's, but Daisy declines. But then she's like thinking about that when she gets dressed, and she knows she has to look good, so Magnolia thinks so. She gets dressed, and she's wearing like a little dress and these booties, and Magnolia's like, strappy sandals would look better with this. And like Daisy knows immediately she's right. She's like, God dang it, she's right. And then later in the day, she finds a pair of strappy sandals on her bed. How early did Daisy get dressed? I don't know. But like an hour later, she finds a pair of strappy sandals on her bed. And she's like perplexed on how Daisy, like in her size. And she's perplexed that Magnolia found time to do this. Like, when did she slip out to buy her sandals? Regardless, she has sandals now and she wears them with her dress. And she's like waiting for Magnolia to be like, told you so. But Magnolia plays it like very cool. Tiller is cranky about the party, and they like bicker about it because he's like, this party's gonna be full of crime and criminals, and Daisy's like, okay, like this is kind of my world, and like you also never invite me to hang out with your friends, so are we just like supposed to lock ourselves in our room and never hang out with anyone? Like, what's it? I don't know what you want. Then we get the roof scene from Daisy's POV, and Henry and Tiller start talking to each other because Daisy's like, Henry could literally talk to a brick wall. Okay, giving Tiller no credit. But anyway, they're talking to each other. Daisy winds up talking to Christian, and Christian compliments her shoes. Magnolia hears and gives her a little smile. So cheeky. The conversation about like Julian hooking up with Magnolia continues, but pivots then after that. We don't see this part of the conversation from BJ's perspective because BJ doesn't care unless it involves Magnolia, to Tiller and Daisy, who've been together for 11 months now. And then Magnolia compliments Tiller's teeth. Okay, gorgeous. And he explains that his mom is a dentist. And then Daisy asks if Magnolia is back in London because she like thought she had moved, and Magnolia explains she's now the fashion editor at the Tattler, and so she's back in town, which is like news to Julian. Like, Julian did not know this. Julian is like, oh, cool. They haven't been talking. That's not what they've been doing over the last couple days. And then Magnolia is talking to Tiller about his job. She says to him, that's such an exciting job. She smiles, takes a drink from my brother's glass. Who is the craziest person you've ever caught? Tiller frowns a bit, catches my brother's eye before he points a bit gingerly towards him. Oh. Magnolia frowns, purses her lips, shifting on my brother's lap, turning in to face him. Was it a misunderstanding? Julian stares at her for a few seconds, I think trying to work out whether or not she's serious. Yeah, he nods. Oh, she breathes out, content with that answer. How wonderful that you sorted it all out. Otherwise, this would have been very awkward. One of like Magnolia's bits, I'm going to call it a bit because it's a little bit unclear to me like how in on it Magnolia is herself, but is that Julian is not actually a criminal. She's like decided in her brain that like he doesn't actually do crime. It comes up again and again. And we know that Magnolia's not stupid. Like, she likes to play stupid sometimes, but like she's not stupid. And so like I'm sure she's like can put the clues together and realize that this man does crime. But she's just like doesn't love that perspective on him, and so she just pretends he doesn't. She just pretends he doesn't, and I think she's like pretends so hard that she deludes herself into kind of believing it as well. And then anyway, after that conversation, Tiller's sad because he's realizing he's sitting with a criminal. And Daisy like can't have fun if Tiller's not having fun because like obviously she's like stuck with him, and she like can't leave him behind. She's like, this kind of sucks. But then he claims he needs to head to bed because he has to work in the morning, and she's like, tomorrow's a holiday, and he's like, well, I'm like following someone. And she's like, no, you're not. But she like is like, whatever. She doesn't want to like fight with him. So he goes down to bed and she's like, well, I'm going to stay up, I think, if that's okay with you. Like, I don't want to leave you down here alone. Like, if that'll make you sad. And he's like, no, I'll be sleeping. Like, it won't matter. And so she goes back upstairs. And as she's like walking back upstairs, she is like just thinking about the fact that like they are on their last legs. It's like so clear that like things are over. They get upstairs, or Daisy gets upstairs and immediately bumps into Christian. And Christian is like, where's Tiller? And she's like, oh, I put him to bed. And they get drinks at the bar, and Daisy comments on the fact that Christian didn't bring Vanna to this party because Christian and Vanna are like dating. And Christian says, I wouldn't do that to you. She's like, essentially, I'm obsessed with you. I like understand you have a boyfriend, but like, I'm literally waiting for you. The moment you are ready, like, I'm here. Like, that's the vibe he's giving. And then he looks over, we see the like Julian, Magnolia, BJ love triangle happening from like this outsider perspective. Julian practically has his hands up Magnolia's dress. BJ's clearly fuming, but like he can't leave the party because everyone would know he left because he was upset about Jules and Magnolia. Also, Jordan doesn't want to leave, we know. And Christian notes that Julian is like all over Magnolia in a way that is not typical of Julian. And like if Julian is really falling for Magnolia, like everyone's going to be in trouble. Like that's not a good situation. It's just not going to be good for anyone. Also, there is a drama on the other side of things because we have the Tara, Henry, Jonah love triangle also happening in the same space. They wind up leaving. Daisy takes them to this like little secret alcove on the roof that is supposed to be like an emergency hiding spot. Like no one knows it's there. It's behind like a fake wall on the rooftop. It's where Daisy is supposed to go if there's ever like a situation in the house in which she needs to like hide. And only she, her brother, and now Christian know where it is. It's not on any of the blueprints, any of the plans. And so they're just sitting there alone. And she's like, you can't tell anyone about this spot. And he's like, of course I wouldn't. Like, no big deal. And they're like watching the like city street. And they're like, what should we do until midnight? And they just wind up like, chatting until the city of London like starts counting down. And then Daisy says to him like, okay, at midnight I'm going to put my head on your shoulder. Like that's as much affection as we will give ourselves. And they count down. She says, Happy New Year, she says, not looking at me. I don't say anything for a few seconds. Drop my head on top of hers. Let it rest there how it always wants to. This is the hottest thing that's ever happened to me on a midnight. She sniffs a laugh. Doesn't move a muscle. I don't believe that for a second. I shift a bit. Press my mouth to the top of her head. Unsanctioned, she says, but she doesn't move. Sorry. You didn't say it back, she tells me. Head still where I want it. I smile, but she can't see it. Glad she can't too. I'm smiling like an idiot. Happy New Year, baby. Ugh, cute. Christian... Jessa Hastings is working so hard to make me a Christian lover. She's like really trying to convince me that Christian's good enough for our girl Daisy. We'll see. Then we jump back to Magnolia. Magnolia's headed back down to Julian's room post New Year's Eve party. And we kind of get like a little bit of what is happening in terms of what happened. This is the first time we're in Magnolia's perspective on New Year since she's gotten with Julian. And Julian's room has changed like substantially since Magnolia has been the last inside of it. And she thinks about how last time she was in this bedroom, like years ago, right after the initial BJ kind of like breakup. I guess not the very, very first BJ breakup, but I think like, I don't know, later at some point, they like didn't sleep together and Kiko made her pancakes. Anyway, and she thinks about the fact he never told anyone about it. And like, she would have imagined this would have been a story he would have told people, but like, he never told anyone. It like really changed her perspective on Julian. And now she's walking around this bedroom and she's looking at the art in his bedroom and sees Ernst Ludwig's Kirchner's Street, Berlin. And Magnolia says, this is very realistic. And Julian says, it's not a print. And Magnolia says, you bought Street Berlin? How much was it? And Jules says, cheaper than you might think. And Magnolia says, some people just don't appreciate the value of art. Funny, I swear I saw this hanging in the MoMA a couple months ago. And Jules says, you don't know much about my family, do you? What we do? Again, it's hilarious. Like, this is the funniest bit. And it's funnier because it's unclear how in on it Magnolia is. I think most of it is just like willful ignorance. Like, she's choosing to like block that option from her brain. Magnolia is kind of upset because Daisy doesn't love her, and like Magnolia wants everyone to be obsessed with her. Like, she doesn't like it when everyone's not obsessed with her. It's been a week of her like hanging out in his bedroom, and she like hasn't really left his house much. She literally follows him to the bathroom when he like goes to take a shower, and she's like dreading the moment he like turns around and tells her to leave. Magnolia cannot tolerate being alone, especially if she's upset. But she has her annual brunch plans with the whole box set coming, and she's a little nervous. It's January 3rd. They always like have brunch on January 3rd. It's like far enough after New Year's where everyone is like recovered from the parties. And Julian clocks that she's like really nervous, and he asks if she wants him to come. And Magnolia says, you're not the kind of boy you bring to lunch. I'll be fine. I can go by myself. And Julian says, I'll come. I don't have much on today. Pretty slow around here at the minute, which is a lie. We'll see the scene from Julian's perspective, and like, it's very clearly a lie. But first we'll get the brunch from BJ's perspective. And BJ opens this chapter talking about the reason he hasn't broken up with Jordan yet is because he's the dumbest boy alive. He doesn't think this internally, but we know it as the reader. We're like, bestie love, break up with your girlfriend. He is bringing Jordan to brunch just to piss off Magnolia. Like, normally they don't bring dates to this brunch, but now both Magnolia and him are bringing a date as essentially like cannon fodder. Magnolia is the last one to arrive. She brings Julian, obviously, and BJ is like, oh, let's get an extra chair for Magnolia or to sit in. So Magnolia and Julian both have one, and Julian's like, no. And he pulls her onto his lap again. Magnolia sits down. She's blatantly rubbing it into BJ's face that she has not left Julian's house, essentially, since she arrived there. She's a huge hickey on her neck that she's very clear to like show off. Julian leaves at some point to take a phone call, and while that happens, the rest of the table gets drinks, and Magnolia is almost straight up vodka. Like, Jonah winds up taking a sip, and he's like, whoa. And then BJ takes a sip and is like, girl, are you okay? Magnolia takes her drink back, and they like share a look where they like convey the fact that like Magnolia's like, yeah, this is your fault. Like, I'm really hurting, and this is your fault. Then we get the brunch POV. Then we get the brunch from Julian's perspective, and it's mostly just him trying to rationalize why he's so obsessed with Magnolia. He compares her to a beautiful piece of art that you just like want to stare at. We get his like perspective in which he like agrees with Magnolia that he's not usually a brunch guy, but like he'll do it for her. On the way to brunch, Magnolia asks why Declan and Kikoa always come with him to like everything, and she's like, well, they're my security, so like they come with me every time I leave the house. And as they walk in, Jonah spots them before anyone else, and obviously Jonah is spectacularly surprised that Julian is brunching with Magnolia, because again, this is not the MO of Mr. Haites. And then we get the phone call he left on, and the phone call is like quite vague, but it's TK. And TK is also surprised that he's at brunch with Magnolia, but that's not what the phone call is about. The phone call is about Brown, and they've lost Brown in Morocco. This is like the only thing we'll hear about this for like quite a while. But like clearly the situation that unfurled last book is still going on, in which this guy kind of like pulled one over on Julian. Julian's not thrilled with that. We're still trying to deal with the aftermath of that. We jump ahead a couple weeks. We're still in January, but a few weeks post New Year's, and we're in Daisy's perspective, and she knows that her and Tiller need to end things, but neither one of them wants to pull the trigger. Honestly, it's less that she wants to keep Tiller around, and more that she like wants what Tiller represents. Tiller represents for her this like normal life, and like I think she very much loved her life with Tiller, but as soon as they move back into the compound, that was kind of like shattered, and he's like the only remnant she has left of it. Julian pops into her bedroom and is explaining to Daisy that like she was right. The painting that she suggested was a setup, but like she doesn't need to worry about. Like, he's going to take care of it, because Daisy seems a little concerned about this, and he's like, I'll take care of it, because he takes care of Daisy. At the end of the day, Julian is going to take care of his sister. And then he asks if he's like headed out, and he's like, do you guys need me to pick up anything while I'm out? He's like such a gem. Anyway, after they leave, Tiller's like, what was he talking about with the painting? And Daisy's like, oh, I just told him something. And Tiller's like, you can't help him. He's a cop. I'm a cop and he's a criminal. And Daisy's like, he's my brother. Would you have me just let him get arrested? And Tiller's like, maybe. Like, you ran away from him for 8 months, Daisy. Like, I kind of thought you were cool with that. And Daisy is like, those were the loneliest 8 months of my life. And that obviously hurt Tiller's feelings, because they were dating for those 8 months as well. So, like, what is he supposed to do with that? And then Daisy goes on to explain that, like, Julian is her only family. Like, that is important to her. And Tiller says, then why did you help me sabotage his job last year? He towers over me, says it like he thinks I'm a traitor for it too. And Daisy says, because I was saving him. They, like, fight a little bit more. And Daisy asks Tiller just to, like, kiss her. And she calls it a Judas kiss. So, like, the kiss right before a breakup. I know it's coming. I can feel it like you can feel a sun setting. Everything gets cooler and darker and more shadowy. And that's what we've been like since Christmas. And I should have called it already, but I think of him and the coffees on the floor and how I'd like to wake up, how it felt to wake up next to him. How he felt like morning light no matter the time of day. It's hard to walk away from the light. He is very light. Killian Tiller. He is very beautiful, very light-filled. He sees everything in black and white, I think, or he used to. I think the world is grayer for him now because of me. And that's not what I want for him. It's not what I want for him, and still I say nothing. I kiss him back, give him a Judas kiss of my own. And then, I guess, they're all Judas kisses lately. Tiller goes to work, and then Daisy winds up wandering downstairs, and she finds Magnolia, like, sitting in the kitchen at the table, just, like, chilling there. And Daisy's like, why are you still at our house? And Magnolia is like, I will leave. Like, sorry, I'll leave. But, like, before she goes, she's like, I'm so sorry about everything that, like, happened with the Christian stuff. Like, I didn't realize he was still in love with me. She kind of, like, Magnolia kind of explains herself and how she, like, used Christian as this, like, backup plan. Essentially, she, like, kept him on standby because she's so terrified of being alone. And Daisy asks if she's doing the same thing with her brother right now, just, like, using him not to be alone. And then Daisy winds up opening a bottle of wine and asks her to stay. And an hour later, they're sitting on the kitchen floor, and Magnolia is braiding her hair and telling Daisy that Julian is certainly not an art thief. Magnolia knows how to braid. Oh, we get this, like, so sweet story. We get this story about how the fact that Magnolia knows how to French braid, like, so well is because while Magnolia's hair is, like, wavy, she, like, takes after her mother in terms of her hair texture. Bridget's hair is, like, much more, like, kinky curly. It takes after her dad's hair texture. When she was little, Bridget didn't like her hair getting in her face, and so Magnolia had learned how to braid so she could get it out of her sister's face. And Daisy asks, why didn't your mom just do it? And she gives me kind of a pleasant, bleary-eyed smile. She wasn't that kind of mother, Magnolia says. And, like, can Magnolia and Daisy, like, sit and talk about how their mothers stuck together? Like, this is actually really important. Daisy actually is the worst mother alive. I don't think we, like, see anything directly about Daisy's mother in this, like, chunk. But, like, Daisy's mother, if I saw her in an alley, I would beat her up. I would, like, literally punch her in the face and break her nose. Like, that woman is vile. Magnolia's mother is negligent, but, like, not maliciously so. Daisy's mother deserves to get punched in the nose. Anyway, that's where Julian finds them. He finds Daisy and Magnolia, like, drunk on the floor of the kitchen when he gets home. Christian's with him. Magnolia is clearly, like, incredibly drunk at this point. When she tries to stand, she, like, stumbles, and Julian has to catch her. He, like, sets her up at the table, and he wants to make her a sandwich, but Magnolia's like, I don't want one. And Christian then drinks the rest of the wine in, like, Magnolia's glass, essentially, like, being like, no more for you. And then he's like, hey, Magnolia, when's the last time you ate? Like, what have you eaten today? And Magnolia tries to claim that she ate leftovers earlier, but Daisy's like, I didn't see her eating when I came downstairs. And she goes to, like, Daisy gets up to go check the sink to see if there's, like, dishes in the sink. But before she can, she slips and falls and, like, sprains her ankle. Christian winds up scooping her up and carries her upstairs, like, gets her ice, helps her. And once they're upstairs, she says to Christian, I, like, don't think she did eat. And Christian is like, no, I know. She goes like this sometimes when she feels, don't worry about it. I'll keep an eye on it. And for the first time, Daisy kind of is realizing that, like, Magnolia's life might not be so perfect. From the exterior, I think Daisy really did think that she had this, like, shiny, perfect life. And she's, like, essentially, like, using her brother for some reason to, like, make BJ jealous. And she's, like, really just uncomfortable with, like, the bubbliness and cheeriness of Magnolia. But I think for the first time with, like, the mother comment and this comment about Magnolia, like, not eating when she gets, like, really upset, she's realizing that a lot of this is kind of, like, a mask. Like, this is something that Magnolia, like, lacquers on top of all of the tough stuff in her life. And then Christian is like, is it okay that I'm in your room? You have, like, a boyfriend. And Daisy's like, probably not, but he stays anyway. Nothing happens between Christian and Daisy that night. But Christian is smarter than BJ. We have to give Christian that. Because after this whole situation with Christian and Daisy, he is like, I need to go talk to Vanna. He goes to Vanna's hotel. He is feeling really uncomfortable. He's just been thinking about Daisy all day. He's been blowing off Vanna for days now. And he goes to the hotel and he breaks up with her. And we learn a little bit more about Vanna's backstory and how, like, she was a child star. I don't really care. You don't really care. I don't care. And we also get a little tale about Rush Evans dating Magnolia back in the summer and how Rush had brought her to a movie premiere and then had gotten in, like, a big fight with Tom England. And at the time, Christian had been hooking up with Vanna, and then their picture had been taken and gotten posted on the cover of the Daily Mail. And so they started, like, dating. But, like, it was kind of an accidental stumbling into dating more seriously. And he breaks up with her and he says, you know, it has nothing to do with you, but, like, I'm in love with someone else. And then Vanna is, like, pissed about it, but she, like, sends him on his way. Go back to Miss Magnolia. They're in Julian's bed, and Julian's solving a Rubik's Cube. Okay. I would have thought he had cooler hobbies, but go off, Jules. And Magnolia keeps scrambling them for him, and then passing them back to him so he can solve them. And then, they're in her room. They're actually at her house. They're not at Julia's house. Gus and Harley walk into the room with Bridget because Bridget and Harley are going to lunch together. And then Julian comes around the corner. He left at one point. He comes back in and gives Harley a hug. And Magnolia goes, "Are we from Dirty Money?" And then to Julian, "No offense, dirty money is better than new money. Imagine being from new money. Yuck. What is it that you do?" And Julian says, "I'm an art collector." And then Bridget says, "How do you collect it?" And Julian says, "Through back channels." And then Julian explains that him and Harley have actually partied together, and that's how they know each other. They haven't actually worked together. And then we get the very formal Bridget and Julian introduction. And Bridget is not a fan of Julian because obviously she's Team BJ because she has a brain. She knows what's happening. But Julian is trying his best to charm his sister. He says to Bridget, "Your sister speaks very highly of you. She says you're the smartest person she knows, the funniest person she knows, and that you're not going to like me at all. But I'm hoping we can make her wrong about one of those things because I don't like it very much when she is right." And Bridget says, "Well, we do have that in common." And then Magnolia critiques Bridget's outfit, which does include pleather ASOS loafers. Which, girl, you should not be wearing pleather if you were a multimillionaire. I'm kind of with Magnolia on this one. I don't think Bridget should be shopping at ASOS when she has the funds not to. Girl, get into sustainable fashion. Then we get a chapter from BJ's perspective. He is having lunch with Henry and his parents with the girlfriends. So Jordan and Tara are there. No siblings. No sisters. Normally the sisters are at the big Ballentine lunches. Henry is currently not speaking to BJ, which is probably why the parents called. BJ's mom hates it when the boys are fighting. They get to eat in the fancy living room, which BJ's as a 26-year-old man, I've only been in a couple times. The girls are chatting and Jordan asks about how Tara used to sleep with BJ, but now Tara's with Henry and Jonah. And Jordan asks if Tara slept with Christian. She has. And Tara says, "What can I say? The boys are my Pokemon." And then Jordan goes, "Who's Pikachu?" I hate Jordan. Jordan becomes more and more annoying in this section, not just because she's dating BJ, but also because why do you keep asking these really intrusive questions for no reason? Then BJ, deciding he's done with that conversation too, goes to help his mother set the table, and she mentions how sad she is that the boys are fighting, and she asks if Jordan is the problem, and BJ admits that he doesn't think so. He actually thinks it's Magnolia because he's I hurt Magnolia and Henry didn't like it. And his mom goes, "BJ." And then later we see at lunch there is this moment in which Mr. Ballentine tells the story of how he met their mom. And it's a story that Henry and BJ have heard countless times, but it'll be the first time that Jordan has heard it. They met at university first day. He saw her and followed her to a bar after a lecture. Weird. We always tease him for that part. And asked her if he could buy her a drink. She said yes. They spent the night together, drove to the White Cliffs of Dover the next day because Mom had said she had never seen them. The next day, he asked her to marry him. In a day. Never looked back. They got married a few months later, and they're the happiest couple I've ever seen. When you know, my dad says. I think that's why he gets so angry about me and Parks. When you know, you know. We're meant to be, me and Parks, right? That's what this is about. We're fated, woven into the tapestry of the universe, my name right next to hers. We're in the stars. That's why whatever is happening to us right now is so messed up. We're meant to be. And everyone who knows us knows it. BJ knows that this story is his dad's attempt to remind him of this without directly telling him that she's with the wrong girl. And BJ can't even look over at Jordan while all of this is happening because he misses Magnolia so badly. And then BJ starts clearing the table at the end of things, and Henry comes up to him because he can tell that BJ was kind of rattled by lunch. And he's like, "Hey, you okay?" And BJ says, "You done not talking to me?" And Henry goes, "Depends. Are you done being an a-hole?" And then he talks about how Magnolia and him are best friends. Henry and Magnolia have go back further than even BJ does. And she is essentially part of their family. Him, BJ and her were together for so long, and also he's so close with her as friends that she Henry can't be put in between them because he loves them both so much. And BJ's she messed up too. Why does she always get away with it? You're never mad at her. And Henry's what do you want from her? And BJ says, "I just want her." And Henry goes, "BJ, you had her." And BJ thinks about how Henry is probably closer to her than anyone but him. How when in high school they would fight her and BJ, she would go sleep in Henry's bed. If Henry wasn't his brother and he knew and trusted Henry so well, he would be jealous and concerned about their relationship. And BJ says, "Do you think I'm good enough for her?" And Henry goes, "Yeah, BJ, I don't know what you're talking about." And BJ goes, I cheated on her. And then I slept around, did drugs, partied harder than she liked, and then I cheated with her. I know she thinks I'm an F-up pen. Henry goes, she doesn't. And he does, don't lie to me. I am an F-up. And BJ says, you F'd up. You aren't an F-up. This one says the F word so many times and I do have to censor it for YouTube and it doesn't hit as hard. And BJ says, just tell me, Hen, as her friend, as someone who loves her how I know you do, if I wasn't your brother, would you think I was good enough for her? And Henry pauses. We don't even get Henry's actual answer because in that pause, like BJ reads what he needs to, that like Henry isn't like, doesn't think so. And BJ says, I'm not. And apparently we all know. This conversation literally made me cry while I was rereading it. Like, sweet baby angel. The fact that like BJ just like, this is like BJ's big problem in this book, is he like is so close to Magnolia. He knows that if he did A and B, he'd have her back. Like, without a doubt. He would have to like swallow a little of his pride. But like more than that, he doesn't know if he should do that because he loves her, I think, enough to know that he isn't good enough for her. Like, he loves her more than Henry does. And he, like, if he wasn't himself, he would never want someone like him to end up with her. Like, she deserves better than him. Just be better, BJ. You can do it. Then we get to Miss Magnolia. Magnolia is still at Jules' place, and obviously the boys are trying to teach her how to play Grand Theft Auto. She's very bad at it. Did anyone think she was going to be good at it? And she's a little bit smitten with Julian. She's, like, starting to kind of be like, oh, this is actually kind of fun and fresh. Because she feels really safe with him. He's like a little bit rougher on the edges than she'd prefer and a little bit like impolite. But she likes how possessive he is over her. Like, he's always touching her, always grabbing her, always kissing on her, like in front of everyone. And she likes it. And also he's sweet and he's a gentleman and he opens her car door and like buys her presents and like, he's a good man, Savannah. Daisy arrives home and she's like looking like super cranky. And she like asks the boys like what's going on. And they're like, well, her and Taylor are fighting. So like she's in a bad mood. Also, she doesn't like you. Magnolia's like, oh my gosh, what are the relationship issues? I want to be able to fix them. Magnolia is a fixer. And Julian explains that Taylor doesn't like what they do, the crime. And Magnolia once again is like perplexed by the idea of Julian doing crimes. What do you mean? And Magnolia's like, I'm going to go fix it. And Julian's like, no. And Magnolia's like, no. I'm really good at this. Let me work. Jules continues to try to stop her, but Magnolia persists. Daisy's in the kitchen cooking, and Magnolia comes in and says, I hear you're sad. And Daisy takes her spoon that she's using to stir a sauce, and she flicks it at Julian. Or, like, not the spoon, but she, like, points it at him, and it flicks sauce onto Magnolia's cashmere cardigan. And she says, F you, to Julian. And Magnolia's like, about the like cream sauce on her cardigan. She says, it's fine. Accidents happen. And then Daisy intentionally flicks more sauce at her on purpose. And then Julian stands between Daisy and Magnolia and goes, oi, tell her you're sorry. And Magnolia peeks around Julian and says, I'm sorry you and Taylor are fighting. Relationships can be so tricky. And Daisy says, you'd know. And then Magnolia goes, seen Christian lately? And Daisy says, no. You seen BJ lately? And then Magnolia looks sad and Daisy is like, she feels bad. As soon as Magnolia looks sad, everyone is like, folds immediately. And she's like, give me your sweater so I can like treat it before it stains. And Magnolia's like, well, it's not really a sweater, it's a cardigan. And then she's like, I don't have anything on underneath. And then there's this whole situation which Julian has to give Magnolia one of his shirts because he's wearing a couple layers. And like Magnolia takes off the cardigan, and then Julian wants to hook up with her right there in the kitchen. So Daisy has to leave. And she leaves with a cardigan, which she does treat for Magnolia. An angel. And then we see Mr. BJ. He's at brunch with Bridget because him and Bridget have weekly lunches on Wednesdays. They've picked up the tradition again, and he's glad because he missed her. And he talks about how like Bridget is like another sister to him. Like the Ballentines really kind of like adopted the Parks girls because their parents are so negligent, and they like went on a lot of family vacations together, and they spent like a lot of time at the Ballentines' house. And so like they're all kind of incredibly close. And they're talking about the baby a lot, about Billy, because everyone is kind of like processing this. All their friends like found out about this, like the traumatic situation of BJ and Magnolia losing this baby like pretty late in their pregnancy, and like I think BJ and Magnolia have obviously had like a decade to process it, but this is news to all of them. And then Bridget is like talking with BJ about it, and she's telling him that she thinks he'd be like a really good dad. Ugh, which like shatters me. And then Magnolia arrives at lunch with Henry in tow. And Magnolia's like, what are you doing? To Bridget. And Bridget says, honestly, Magnolia, I'm just trying to get this show on the road. How long are these growing pains going to last for, do you think? And Henry says, already been too long, in my opinion. And Magnolia goes, growing pains? And Bridget says, yes. It's very tedious watching you two be with other people. And Magnolia says, then you should watch something else. And Bridget says, oh, that I could, Magnolia. Oh, that I could. And then BJ and Magnolia are just longingly gazing at each other, as they do. And Henry and Bridget call them out on it, although neither will admit that they're obsessed with the other. And Bridget's like, I've got an idea. Let's do a couple therapy session. And Henry's like, yeah, let's do it. And then Magnolia turns to Henry and says, BJ and I will do a couples therapy session right now. If you, Jonah, and Tara will do one, and we'll get to watch. And Henry says, actually, no, you're fine. I'm sure they'll work it out. One day they'll just round a corner and be together forever. Magnolia goes still, looks over at me. We've rounded a lot of corners. Her heart breaks in her eyes like a dropped egg, and I don't know what I'm doing anymore without her. I hate being without her. Rummage through the drawers in my mind as fast as I can to find the words to tell her that I'm coming back for her. I'm on my way back, and this is just the long way home. But the drawers are a mess. The words are all jumbled. I love her, and then what? And then she pushes back from the table. And then, Henry and Magnolia head out. Oh my gosh. How am I crying over this doofus? Once Magnolia leaves, BJ turns to Bridget and asks if she thinks Henry's right, that they'll just be together again one day. And Bridget is like, yes and no. She does think that they will decide to be together one day and it will work, but neither of them are willing to make that decision to do the work that they need to get to that place again. And BJ says, I would do anything for her. And Bridget says, except lose face. Pride suffocates relationships, BJ. And BJ says, she's proud. Bridget says, yeah, she is. Insanely so. Probably the only thing she's more proud is afraid, though, don't you think? And BJ, oh my gosh, the thought of Magnolia being afraid because of him shatters him. The fact that she's afraid and it's his fault and he knows it. I think this is a few days later. We are seeing, from Miss Magnolia's perspective, they're heading to one of the clubs with Jules, and Magnolia ends up with her crew because Jonah is headed to the back to talk to Jonah, and Julian head to Jonah's office to chat. Again, Magnolia is very intentionally avoiding the fact that Julian is a criminal because it's not her business, to be honest. She says, that's not my business. If Tiller could only adopt this mindset, maybe Tills and Magnolia could have a heart to heart. And she says, Tiller, they don't do crime. What are you talking about? They don't. Julian just collects art. He does some stuff, and that's not our business. She sits right next to Tara, who's sitting right next to BJ and Jordan. There's some outfit compliments, some missing each other in glances, some sleeve touching between Magnolia and BJ. And then Jordan asks her, what's Julian like in bed? Girl, that's an unhinged thing to ask. You are not that close. No. And then the question obviously hurts BJ. Magnolia immediately recognizes that question hurts BJ. And she apologizes to BJ with her eyes before she remembers, wait, I'm still mad at him. And then they talk about how Julian is very athletic in bed. And the other day they did it on the stair climber, which was fine, involved nothing for Magnolia, but was difficult for Julian. That's crazy. Why? Just to say you could, I guess. Whatever. Also, she blacked out once while they were hooking up, and she woke to Daisy in the room too because Julian brought Daisy in to check on her. Julian comes back and he starts poking at BJ, and BJ says, you want to take this outside? Sweet baby Ballentine, he'll literally kill you. Don't say that to him. They're going back and forth. BJ escalating things. And Jonah runs over, has to separate them. The boys keep going. And BJ's like, you know what? I think you're all talk, man. And Jules says, are you willing to stake your life on that? And then Magnolia grabs Julian's face. She's holding his face in her hand so he will look at her. And she says, look at me. In no world. Do you understand? You will not hurt BJ. That's my boy. At the end of the day, that's mine. And you're not going to hurt him. And then Jonah takes Julian back to his office so they can have a Coca-Cola. So they can sit down and sip on a nice ice cold Coca-Cola. And Julian checks in with Magnolia first because Julian knows that Magnolia does not like Coca-Cola. Doesn't like people doing Coca-Cola. And so he asks if it's okay. Magnolia, after he leaves, immediately heads to the bar because she needs a drink, and BJ comes over and apologizes to her. And he tells her he hasn't had any Coca-Cola since May because he felt like he was disappointing her. And Magnolia says, you got clean for me? And BJ says, and for me. Magnolia says, I'm proud of you. And then BJ asks how she's doing with Jules, and Magnolia doesn't know what to say because, like, it's doing its job. Like, Julian to her is an oxygen mask. And then Magnolia, they're like chatting at the bar for like a while, and then Magnolia turns around and looks and sees Julian with like a rando girl on his lap. And it like crushes her. Especially him doing this to her in front of BJ. She thinks, I have a quiet but prevalent worry that BJ might see me as a tiny bit disposable, and the very idea of him seeing someone else perpetuate that makes me want to cry more than I already want to cry from seeing Julian do this in the first place. It just like triggers her BJ wound. You know how some people have like a mother wound? She has a BJ wound. A BJ wound in her heart, in which like seeing men cheat on her and seeing men kind of like flaunt girls in front of her, it like hurts her extra. And she storms over to Julian, who has the girl on his lap, and she says, listen, I don't care what you do when I'm not here, which is this, I presume. He rolls his eyes. I'm not done talking. I put my hands on my hips, and he pulls his head back, amused. You want to fill up random girls who are substantially less attractive than I am? That's your prerogative. But when I'm in the same room as you, I am all you see. Julian goes, is that right? Or what? And Magnolia says, or we're done, which is fine by me, by the way. You've wanted me for, I catch eyes with his bodyguard. What would you say, Kikoa? 4 or so years? Kikoa shakes his head. More like 5. You've wanted me for 5 years, and I've sort of wanted you for maybe like 3 weeks. So no skin off my back. What's it going to be? Julian shoves the girl off his lap, and then Magnolia says, don't do that again. And then Magnolia's like, take me home. And on the way home, she says to Julian, you know, if you ever hurt him, I'd kill you. And Julian goes, is that a threat? And she says, yeah. Then we get this. Next morning, Kikoa walks into Julian's office and says, did you let that little girl tell you what to do last night? And Jules tries to brush it aside, but the boys aren't buying it. So Julian's like, okay, to save face, he's supposed to go to dinner with Magnolia tonight. And he's like, I'll just hang out and do dinner with the boys instead. Like, cancel on her. Because like he is a little cranky at Magnolia for embarrassing him in front of everyone at the club last night. And we do like very briefly get the club night from his perspective. And we learn that like essentially he's like really jealous of BJ and Magnolia. Like he saw their interactions together and got jealous. And that's why he like threatened to fight him. And then we also learn that like how he learned that Magnolia didn't like Coca-Cola was one time she just came into his office while he was doing some and she like went a bit weird. And so that's why he like mentioned it. He was just being considerate, okay? And then in Jonah's office, Jonah was like, hey, so sorry about BJ. And then he asks about the Magnolia situation. And Jonah warns Julian that like Magnolia doesn't have boundaries and like hates being alone. So be careful. Like she will pull you in and make you fall in love. Like watch yourself. Then he goes back into the club and BJ and Magnolia are at the bar together. He gets mad when he sees them back together again. So that's why he grabbed a random girl who he doesn't even like very much. And he had hooked up with her before. And he explains that if you just put a hand on a girl's low back and also like remember one detail about their life, they're sold. And so he asked this girl about like an exam she took. And she's like flattered obviously that he remembered. Also, she did fail the exam. Then Magnolia comes over and gives her little speech. And he like hates it, but also he loves it. Okay? Like, I think there is something about Julian that like loves a little back and forth. Later that day, Magnolia comes into Jules' office for their dinner because Julian forgot to actually cancel with Magnolia. He like made plans with the boys and was like, I'm gonna cancel dinner with Magnolia, but he forgot to do it. And then Magnolia's like, okay, that's fine, but like clearly she's like hurt and no one can handle a disappointed Magnolia. So Julian's like, never mind, I'll make it work. And Kikoa is like, this is very telling. Kikoa is like, girl, get it together. Then we also get some Magnolia and BJ texts where BJ like checks in with her after the club night, but it ends with like antagonism. They're like kind of mean to each other by the end of these text messages. Then we get a Daisy chapter. Things are going not great for Miss Daisy. This is how her chapter begins. They say that around 2:17 in the morning, her lights went out. Me and Tiller's lights went out a little bit ago. Probably before Christmas, I'd say, but definitely and undeniably by New Year's Eve. Our lights were out, and maybe, if we actually listened, we might have been able to hear the rumbling start of us, bending and creaking and cracking apart down the middle. I love the Titanic metaphor we get for Tiller and Daisy in this. Like, sometimes it's a little heavy-handed, but I think it's, like, gorgeous. I love Jessa Hastings. I have talked about it, like, ad nauseum, but I think she's just, like, such an interesting writer. She breaks so many of the, like, conventions that, like, make good writing. Like, there is so much extra words. Like, you could cut a lot of these words and have the same meaning, but because there are so many extra words in her books, I feel like we get such a richer sense of, like, the characters and they're, like, indecision about certain events. I just like really think she's incredibly talented, and I think her books are, yeah, fascinating and just like stylistically so different from everything else in a way that just like really tickles my brain. Anyway, Daisy this morning, Tiller has already left for work, and Daisy sees that he left his police badge in the bathroom and decides that she's going to bring it to him. She's not busy at all. She's like really nothing to do. She's had to drop out of like her medical school process. Julian has a tutor coming to like teach her medical things a couple times a week, but she's already done all the reading for him. She's written some extra like papers that no one asked for, just because she like needs something to occupy her time, because she really has nothing, because she's not safe being in school anymore. And things are not good between her and Tiller. They had like a big fight a few days ago, and they haven't kissed since. He hasn't kissed her since then. And she knows it's gonna be like a little awkward going into the police station, but she's like it's the nice girlfriend thing to do, right? She goes downstairs, she finds Miguel so he can drive her, and Julian asks where she's going, and Daisy says the NCA, and Julian says, just what every criminal wants to hear his live-in sister say. And he suggests they just like hold on to the badge. It's like an undercover police badge, and he's like mostly joking, but also like it would be helpful. And then Julian says, while you're there, will you check to make sure I'm still their number one? And Daisy says, I don't think they keep your photo on a corkboard or anything. Miguel checks in on Daisy once they're alone and asks how her relationship is going and like how she's doing, because he's just like seen how terrible it's been. Apparently that other night, when Daisy and Tiller had fought, he had left the house and hadn't returned until like 3 o'clock in the morning. And Daisy's like, oh, he just went on a run. And Miguel's like, till 3 o'clock in the morning? Also, I heard you crying upstairs. Daisy denies it, but we see in her head that she had been like crying alone, like sitting in her bed watching the Great British Bake Off. Daisy heads into the police station. They give her a pat down, even though that is not typical procedure. And she was like, I left my gun in the car. Don't be rude. She's escorted to Tiller's office, and she winds up just like leaving his badge on his desk because he's not in there. And then she's like taking the stairs to leave rather than the elevator. And she hears Tiller talking to Michelle, his ex-girlfriend, who's also a police officer, in the stairwell. The conversation starts with Michelle inviting Tiller to the local bar. And he's like, hey, I would, but like I really do need to spend time with Daisy. And Michelle says, why? So you can keep putting off breaking up with her. And Tiller says, who said I'm breaking up with her? And Michelle says, you volunteering for every possible assignment and staying at the bar till closing every night this week. What are you waiting for? And Tiller says, it's complicated. Michelle says, it's not. She's a criminal and you're not. Tiller says, don't call her that. And Michelle says, why? It's what she is. It's actually all she is. Daisy thinks, I wait for him to jump in. Tell her I'm so much more than that. That I'm clever and beautiful and funny and nearly a doctor, and that I am so many other things. But in particular, I am his girlfriend, and she should speak about me as such. But he says nothing. And like, that's it. That's the Titanic sinking. She like can't like allow herself to remain in this relationship with this man who apparently sees her solely as a criminal, that doesn't see any other value in her and doesn't like stand up for her in front of his ex-girlfriend. She avoids them in the stairwell, dodges them, and then heads back into the car with Miguel. And she asks Miguel to take her to the Lion's Gate, which is the local cop bar. And then she texts Christian to meet her there. Then we get a cute little intermission with Julian. Julian is at his office when Josette Balaska comes to visit. She is like, I haven't heard from you in a while, so I came by to be a distraction. They hook up like quite often when she's in town. Whenever she stops by in town, they hook up. She's kissed him on the couch, and he's thinking about Magnolia Parks. And then she's naked on top of him. I think she might not actually just be topless on top of him. And don't you know it? He's still thinking about Miss Magnolia, when who should walk through the door but Magnolia? Declan had tried to stop her. Obviously not very hard. Magnolia is like this big. Like, we could have gotten rid of her, but whatever. And she sees what's happening. She sees a topless girl on top of Julian. She runs off. She's like, I was actually just looking for the exit. She runs away. Julian runs after Magnolia. And he's like, I've never run after a girl before. Magnolia is clearly upset, although she knows she shouldn't be because they aren't anything official. So she's trying to be like, oh my God, it's totally fine. Totes fine. And Julian tells her that like he's not going to sleep with that girl. Mostly because Magnolia walked in the room. Like he probably would have, but then Magnolia was there. And Magnolia's like, I'm just going to go. And Julian's like, I don't want you to go. Come back inside, please. And internally, he's like so perplexed at himself. Like he's begging this girl to stay. Who is he? And then he sends Magnolia upstairs so he can go talk to Jessa. And Magnolia is like, are you just going to go downstairs so you can hook up with her again real quick before you come up to me? And Julian says, what did BJ do to you? No, like, I just think she's going to take this poorly and I want to be the one to send her on her way. He explains that Josette's not going to take it well, but and Magnolia asks why he decided not to sleep with Josette. And he says, because when you walked in on it, you made that face at me that I never want to see you make again. You pain in the butt. He goes back into the office. Josette is obviously confused and asks if Park is his girlfriend. And he's like, no, I don't do girlfriends, but also I can't sleep with you because she is here. And then Josette is like, do you like her? And it seems like you do. And Julian's like, what? He dodges the question. And then Josette calls Magnolia a not nice name. And when Julian is like, don't call her that, she slaps him. And then Julian does have to kick her out of the house. And he's like, stop it. No, you're not allowed to hit me. Obviously he's not going to hurt her, but whoa, not cool. Get out. He goes upstairs to find Magnolia, who fawns over him because he has a split lip from where he got slapped in the face. And he loves it. He eats it up. He's like, he likes to go to these underground fights. We know this about him. And he's like, I never have anyone courtside to fawn over me. Bestie love. Bestie love. If you think Magnolia Parks would ever step foot in an underground fight and just watch you fight people, I don't think that's her idea of a good time. What shoes would she wear? Okay, back to what we care about, Daisy at the cop bar. Miguel obviously hated this plan because this bar is not a really great place to hang out if you're a criminal. If you are a Haites, you probably shouldn't chill and drink a beer at the cop bar. It's dangerous. And so he's like, I'm going to come inside with you. Because Daisy's like, you can just wait in the car. And he's like, no. Obviously not. She's dressed very cute because when she went to drop off the badge at the police station, she wanted to look cute in front of all of Tiller's coworkers. The outfit is an outfit that just appeared in her closet one day. Thanks, Magnolia. She's looking gorgeous. Christian walks in and he's like, why are we here? What's going on? He also knows this is a cop bar. Daisy's like, what do you mean? What do you mean what's going on? And Christian's like, hello, I know what this is. Why are we here? And then Tiller walks into the room and Christian says, what's going on, Daisy? And Daisy says, I'm a criminal. That's all I am. And Christian says, BS. He said that to you? And Daisy says, his ex-girlfriend said it. He said nothing. And Christian says, you want me to sort him out? Yeah, I do kind of want you to sort him out. No, actually, I want you to kiss me, is what Daisy says. And obviously Christian agrees. And immediately she flashes back to their first kiss. And she's so swept away. And Jessa Hastings is really trying to convince me that these two are written in the stars. And I'm just not in yet. I'm just not. Christian is just a little too waffly. I do think Daisy is the catch of all catches. And Christian is a B- at best. I will put him up. We're at a B-. And Daisy is an A+. And she obviously needs to date someone who's at least A tier. Tiller slides into the seat next to her because he's just seen his girlfriend kissing Christian Jimenez. Christian Jimenez. I had extra syllables to Jimenez. And is like, what the hell, Daisy? And Daisy says, oh, hi. And Tiller says, what are you doing? And Daisy says, me? Oh, nothing. I'm just here with my fellow criminal, doing criminal things because that's all I am. Did you know? And then Daisy starts yelling and Michelle is cutting in and Daisy is then yelling at Michelle and telling Michelle that Tiller used to just make up excuses to come stand in front of her house. And then Michelle calls Daisy dirt. Michelle, you better count your days because I'm going to tell Julian what you said and Julian's going to have you taken out. Excuse me? You think Daisy's dirt? Then Daisy pulls out her gun and she pulls out Tiller's gun. She has two guns. And then Daisy and Christian have some gun related banter. And to be honest, I was thinking during this scene that this is going to be so embarrassing for Christian or for Tiller tomorrow morning. He's going to have to explain where his cop issued weapon is and also explain that his girlfriend was kissing another guy at the bar and stole it from him. And also this is a cop bar. Everyone's here. This is so embarrassing. I'm sure everyone's been girl, you can't be dating a Haites. This is such a bad idea. And now everyone's right. Everyone is right. They're going to be I can't believe he gets to keep his job after this, to be honest. And then Daisy goes, we're done. And Tiller goes, no shit. Which, yeah. Daisy thinks this. I shrug this is easy. Holding a weapon at the head of the man I have loved the better half of a year. A man who has protected me and fought for me, who I've killed for. I pressed the barrel against his forehead over my favorite scar he has, as though I'd ever blow a bullet through that part of his face. I've touched every night like a lamp I rubbed to get to sleep. Like, us ending what we were isn't something I've wrestled with for the last 2 months, even when I knew it was the right thing to do. Even when I knew I still loved someone else, letting Tiller go has felt impossible. I might not have done it if he didn't do it for me today in the stairwell. And now here we are, fighting in a bar, me hurling my ex-boyfriend at him and a literal gun in his face just to hurt him. And Tiller's there looking at me the way I've always been afraid he might. Like, I'm really nothing more than a criminal. Daisy's like, tell them to put their guns down because there's a bunch of cops in the bar that have their guns pointed at Christian and at Daisy. Because Christian has his gun pointed at Michelle. I don't think I mentioned that. And Tiller's like, put your guns down. And then Daisy informs him that one of the boys will bring his stuff to wherever he's staying. Because he's like, I'll come by tomorrow to pick up my stuff. She's like, no, we'll have it dropped off. They're like very mean to each other in these last moments, and it like really hurts my Tiller loving heart. And I wish Tiller was like less of a baby about the whole crime thing. Like, that's truly what I wish. Even if they didn't end up together, like, this is shattering. They run away, and Miguel is pissed because Daisy told him that she wasn't doing anything. Miguel, baby, are you that dumb? No, you believed her? Sweet angel. And she asked him not to tell Julian, but obviously he's going to. Like, he probably already texted Jules and let him know. And Christian is like, so we kissed. Like, what does that mean? And he's like, can I drive Daisy home to Miguel? And Miguel, as always, my king, MVP of the Daisy Haites books, in the same way that Henry is the MVP of the Magnolia Parks books, gives Christian the route he wants him to take her home. He always gives like very explicit instructions and tells her like not to take his time. And Christian makes the drive home in 10 minutes. As they like kind of like recap everything that happened, they're kind of like giddy over it. And then Daisy invites him inside, but Christian is like, I really shouldn't. You literally just broke up with your boyfriend. And like, that hurts Daisy's feelings. Even though Christian is like just trying to be respectful and like give her a little space to process. He like doesn't want to be just something that she hasn't thought of. Like, he's like committed to this to the long haul. And so like wants to make sure this is something that she's really like ready for. She like hates being alone, and her and Magnolia should grab drinks and talk about it, because she like in the aftermath of a breakup, Girlie is going to be sleeping with someone immediately. She storms off, and then Christian is like, what the hell? Like, calm down. And when she won't, he just like kisses her, and they wind up like hooking up against the car, like in the driveway. Then we get a BJ chapter. BJ is playing video games with Jonah, and Jonah is talking with BJ also about the baby. And Jonah is asking who the godfather would have been. And we are just like getting to see like, again, all of their friends processing this and kind of like checking in with BJ and Magnolia and like trying to care for them in a way that they didn't when this actually happened, because they didn't know about it. But like BJ and Magnolia have had a decade to process this. Like, this is not a fresh wound for them. But it does make BJ think about how different his life would have been. And it makes BJ miss Magnolia. But like, honestly, like BJ could trip and skin his knee and it would make him miss Magnolia. He like closes his dresser drawer in the morning and makes him miss Magnolia. He turns on a light switch, it makes him miss Magnolia. Like, it's kind of his general state of being. They haven't spoken since those text messages after the club night. And BJ comments that, again, he can't believe that Jonah is letting Julian mess around with Magnolia. And Jonah explains that like Julian seems like he's not really messing around with Magnolia. Like, he's not with any other girls besides Magnolia right now. Like, they aren't officially dating because, like, that's not Julian's MO, but, like, essentially they are. And BJ's like, do you think she's falling for him? Like, BJ's concerned. And Joe's like, not really. I mean, you know her. She gets attached to her baristas. Remember that poor bastard from Paul who took a flu? She made us all sign a card, and she gave him a £5,000 get well present. She just gets attached to people. She's abandonment issues, man. And then Jonah comments that there like seemed to be like kind of like a vibe between Julian and Magnolia before they even got together. But like, he's like, don't worry, it'll be fine. Don't even worry, it'll be fine. And BJ's like, what if she becomes the neck that turns the head of the Haites dynasty? And Jonah laughs and he goes, can you imagine? That'd be like so silly. And BJ says, yes, I can, Jonah. That is the problem. You don't get it. And Joe says, no. Julian thinks that loving people makes you weak, thinks that it gives his enemies an extra thing to hold over him or something. So set you aside, and you're a big aside. It won't last. He won't let it. And then we get some text messages that are exchanged between Magnolia and Julian, in which he's inviting her back to his place, even though she just left this morning, and promises to take her shopping. And then we get apology text between Magnolia and BJ, and it does get a little flirty vibes. We have both things happening with Miss Magnolia. Then we see Miss Magnolia. She's in the Haites house. She's in a dark hallway. She needs to use the bathroom, and she refuses to do so in front of Julian. That's not something she does in front of anyone. Maybe BJ, but even that she doesn't really like. And she's a little freaked out to be alone in the house. She like mostly wants to be with Julian at all times, but she's being brave. And she's trying to reason through whether Julian actually likes her or not. It's like hard for her to tell. People keep telling her that like he doesn't do this, but it kind of feels like he does like her. Because people are also saying he's being different with her. And so she's like trying to suss things out because she can kind of sense herself falling for him a little bit too. But she doesn't want to fall for him if he's just keeping her around because it's convenient. We get a quick flashback to the Josette scene from earlier from Magnolia's POV and how it like really had made her like ill. Like she thought she might faint, but it was like an important reminder for her that she is just using Julian to occupy her time until BJ like figures his stuff out and like apologizes to her. Anyway, in the present, it's 2 a.m. She bumps in, she's in the hallway of the Haites house, and who should she bump into but Christian in his underwear? And it really scares her initially. And then Magnolia realizes that Christian just came out of Daisy's room. And they start whisper yelling about it in the hallway because Magnolia's like, oh my God, you're in love with her. And Christian is like, shh, don't say anything. And then they're like tussling. Like he has her in like a headlock. He's in underwear. She's in like lingerie. And then both Haites are in the hallway. And they're like, hello, what's going on? And Christian shoves Magnolia back to Julian while promising Daisy like nothing was going on. Magnolia concurs. And then Magnolia is like, Julian, yell at Christian for shoving me. And Julian was like, no, he shoved you back to me, so no. Magnolia says BJ would have fought him for that. And Julian says BJ probably is also currently sleeping with that girl of his right now. So if you want to give him a call and ask him to swing by to fight your fake battles, be my guest. And Magnolia says, maybe I will. But she's not going to, obviously. She knows BJ would come, and the thought makes her want to like cry a little, so she gets cranky and grabs for her coat and shoes and tries to like leave. They're back in the bedroom now, and Julian grabs her and is like, okay, do you want me to go smack him around a little bit? And Magnolia says, which him? And Julian says, whoever. You want me to smack around? Whichever him you like. And Julian asks what her deal is tonight because she seems to be just like getting into the drama. And Magnolia's like, I have a secret, but you can't tell anyone. Christian and Daisy are sleeping together. And Julian is like, yeah, we obviously all just like bumped into each other at 2 o'clock in the morning, all in like our underwear. So like, yep, I think that's probably a fair guess. And Magnolia says, and I think she's in love with him. And Jules is like, literally nothing you've said yet is a secret. Messy love. And Magnolia's like, we should help them get back together. And Julian is like, no. Like, obviously he thinks this is a stupid idea. He doesn't need to be meddling in his sister's affairs. And then Magnolia's like, oh, fine. Do you want to know another secret? A real one. Christian and I nearly slept together in New York City. And Julian says, I know. Christian and I talk. Magnolia's like, you know everything. This is no fun. And then Magnolia says, you're not jealous? And Jules says, do you want me to be? It's cute. It's a cute moment. I love Julian Haites. And then we get texts between BJ and Jonah where BJ is whining about Magnolia and Julian still being together. He's like, when are they going to break up? We do get this run-in from Christian's perspective as well. And afterwards, he and Daisy head back to their room and they talk about Julian and Magnolia. And Daisy admits that Julian doesn't normally keep girls around for this long and he is being weird with her. Christian also admits that he kissed Magnolia back in New York City and explains that they had almost slept together, but both of them were in love with other people. He doesn't use the word love, but like it's very clearly implied. And then Daisy's like, okay, thank you so much for telling me. And then they're like good for the moment. Like that seems to be like enough for Daisy. Like everything's good. Everything's settled for now. We check back in with Daisy the next day after the whole Christian Jimenez situation, and she's recounting the story. She's recounting the situation to Jack about like breaking up with Tiller and then immediately hooking up with Christian. And Jack kind of like checks in to make sure like Daisy's feeling okay. And Daisy's like mostly okay. It's not because she didn't love Tiller, like the year she spent with Tiller was important to her, but because she has known this relationship was like dead in the water for months. Like she has already kind of grieved the loss of it because she knew it was over for 2 or 3 months now. And she talks about how she like obsessed she was looking up with Christian and how she had like forgotten how like good it was when the two of them were together. And Jack's like, it's because you're in love with him. And Daisy's like, no, it's not. It is, but that's okay. And Jack says, well, therein lies the problem, Daisy. You never stopped. Pretended like you didn't, but you know what happens when you love someone how you love him. When you don't get over them or past them, it's just like he's a compressed little coil under your foot. But take the pressure off and it springs right back up to size. And Daisy, again, still denies it. And then Romeo walks in and Daisy's like, shh, I don't want Romeo to know this. And Romeo, of course, hears this. And I was like, what do you not want me to hear, Daisy? And she's like, that I've broken up with Tiller. obviously he knew that already. Julian has been telling everyone what a gorgeous story. He's going to tell the neighbors. The girl has been dating a cop, which is not good for his criminal street cred. He put up with it, but like not his favorite. So this was a good time. I'm sure Julian has been telling everyone and his mom. Everyone and their moms. Mostly Carmelo and Romeo's mom. I'm sure Mrs. Brambrillo knows exactly what's happening. Anyway, Daisy also says that she slept with Christian. And Rome is just like the little bitist hurt by this, obviously, because he still has feelings for Daisy. But he's dating Tavi Jukes. In fact, he clarifies because Daisy's like, well, you're sleeping with Tavi. And he's like, I'm not just sleeping with her. I'm dating her. We're dating. We're together. And so, like, obviously he has no right to be upset about this, even though he is. Also, we learn that Jack apparently cheated on Gus with Taj. We, like, knew that at some point Jack was dating Gus Waterhouse, but no longer. They've broken up. There's, like, some background drama there. I'm not really paying attention to it. It's not really important to me. Hopefully it doesn't become a really important plot point in Daisy Hates 3. Then we get a text from Christian. There's like flirty vibes between Daisy and Christian. Then we get a Christian chapter. Christian is late to brunch with the boys because he showered with Daisy and it took longer than it should have. She was telling him about the pre-Raphaelites. And he's like, I bet Tiller didn't let her show this side of herself. I don't think so. Like, we get no indications that Tiller is like anti-Daisy's like intellectualism, her like deep love of like art history. She just isn't allowed to do crime. Like, that's Taylor's big problem with her. But regardless, he is just like delighted to be the subject of her like thoughts. He like loves her brain. Which who wouldn't? Again, Daisy is the catch of the books. And the boys are like a little excited. The boys are like pretty excited about it. Henry is a little hurt that Christian didn't tell him sooner because it's been a few days now. And then BJ asks Christian, you've been around the house a lot then? Is she okay? And Christian's like, who? Even though like obviously everyone knows who he's talking about. Who else would BJ be talking about? But he's like annoyed by the question. And Christian says, I guess, as good as she'll be while you have a girlfriend. She's good. They're good together. And Jonah's like, Christian, don't tell BJ that. It will hurt his feelings. And then Henry says, they're better together than you'd want them to be, mate. And you're not as good with Jordan as you want everyone to think you are. No one thinks you are. Like, no one is buying that. No one's buying what you're selling. And then Jonah says, you know Parks. She's bloody snow white with the songs and the birds on her fingers and deer running after her. But instead of animals, it's men. And Jonah goes on to say, like, Julian is just a bird on her finger. And BJ says, what am I then? And Henry goes, the huntsman. Because he has her heart in a box. I love them. These boys talk in metaphors. I don't think real boys talk in these sorts of metaphors, but like, I don't know what happens at a boys' brunch. Maybe they are. Then we get a little memory chapter from BJ. This chapter is almost entirely a memory of this time that he went on a trip with Magnolia to Bali. It was in a gap where neither of them had a relationship happening, and Magnolia, they're out on a boat together, I think, and Magnolia asks him, or no, they're at the bar together. Magnolia asks him how many girls he slept with, and he doesn't have a count, but he's like, it's a lot, like 2 or 3 a week. And she feels like sick. And then he asks her body count. And she's like, 1. At this point, like, it's a few years out from their breakup. Like, she's had very public relationships. And BJ is like, no, like, what do you mean? And she's like, no, 1, it's just you. And BJ feels just like sick to his stomach. He like cannot handle this at all. And he's like, well, I'm not going to tell you my number now. And Magnolia goes, why not? And BJ goes, because you'll cry. And Magnolia insists. He like keeps pressing, and BJ finally like relents and lets her know that like it's in the hundreds. And then it was like she tried to take a breath and couldn't find it. I'd winded her, deadlocked on each other's eyes. Both our faces were portraits of grief. Her losing me to hundreds of different people, me losing her to them too, I suppose. Then Magnolia is like, okay, will you show me how you pick up girls? Like, how are you able to pick up so many girls so quickly? Like, show me how you work. And he's like, I think that's a terrible idea. I think that will hurt your feelings. And she's like, no, I really want to see it. And it's like clear that she's trying to convince herself that she doesn't care about him anymore. Like, BJ can read that immediately on her. And BJ knows that he shouldn't. And he thinks to himself, like, if I was a better man, I would have just taken her home in that moment. But he doesn't. He relents. He listens to Magnolia. He goes up to the bar where there's a hot girl. And he says to her, are they real? Talking about the girl's eyes. And then he either asks the girl if they had braces or if those lips are her real lips. Just something to draw attention to mouths. And then he buys her a drink, and then later that night he ends up back in her room. He returns back to Magnolia in his room, like before dawn. He like sneaks out of the girl's room, and he feels nauseous. Like he knows he shouldn't have done that. And he finds Magnolia like wrapped up in a blanket on the balcony. And Magnolia says to him, "How was she? She sounded like she had a great time." And BJ's like, "What do you want from me?" And Magnolia says, "A time machine." And then she just like cries. She just like sobs as he like holds her. Afterwards, they order breakfast together, and BJ always orders eggs Benedict, and Magnolia like will pick something random off the menu because she wants to seem like adventurous, but like really she wants eggs Benedict. And their breakfast comes, and she sees his eggs Benedict, and she's like, "That looks really good," and he like gives it to her, and she like feels kind of bad. And BJ's like, "I don't like eggs Benedict. I order them because I know that's what you want, and you don't want to order it for yourself." And then BJ asks if like this ordering something new every time she goes and like off the breakfast menu is part of her like OCD. And Magnolia is surprised he knows that, which is like shocking. Like, girl, he knows everything about you. I think he could draw your fingerprint from memory. Like, bestie's obsessed. Of course he does. Like, he knows her. And he tells this story about how when they were in school, she had gotten a splinter. She had like climbed up into his room, and she had gotten a splinter. And he had gone into the bathroom later that night and had found her with a safety pin, like gouging her skin, trying to like get the splinter out of her arm. And she takes it from him, and she asks BJ to help her to like get it out, because like she won't be able to sleep if she knows it's in there, if she can feel it. She can't put the thought down, she says to him. And she like still has a couple scars on her wrist from this incident. And Magnolia says to BJ, "Do you think I'm crazy?" And BJ says, "No, I think you're the best." And Magnolia says, "Even though you know the worst parts of me?" And BJ says, "I don't know the worst parts of you. I just know you, Parks." This line actually makes me teary. I love it. I think it's so beautiful, and such like a beautiful portrait of like BJ's love for Magnolia. I think he sees her like wholly, this whole picture of her, and he loves every aspect of her, even the parts that are difficult. He just like can't get his shit together enough to make it work. And then the chapter ends like this. "So actually, do you know what? I don't care that the boys say that Parks and Julian are good together. I loved her first. I loved her more. And he doesn't know her like I do. No one ever will." We're back with Miss Magnolia, and she's at the Haites house, and she is trying to convince Daisy to like her, because Magnolia has been on her bad side after Christian admitted the New York City thing to Daisy. And so Magnolia has asked Daisy for cooking lessons, and she is just hopeless at cooking. She's just hopeless. Daisy has been trying to teach her everything. Right now she's trying to scrambled eggs, and Magnolia is managing to mess that up too. Eventually Magnolia just like gives up. She's bored with it, and she goes and she sits on Julian's lap where he's sitting like at the kitchen table, and she's trying to like convince Daisy that they should go out tonight, and Jack's over and he's trying to convince her too. And like eventually she relents, but she says, we're still not friends, Daisy and Magnolia. But Magnolia knows that one day she'll wear down Daisy Haites. One day. And then we get some text between BJ and Magnolia. She had missed BJ at the club. She had come after they had left, I think, and asked about Jordan. And then BJ asked about Jules, and they're still very much with these other people. And they're like both checking in because neither wants to be the first to like say chicken, essentially, when it comes to Julian and Jordan. The next night, we get a Julian chapter. They're headed to Carmelo's Italian restaurant. He just has opened up this brand new Italian restaurant, and so Julian is taking Magnolia there for like a date. And he loves going to places with Magnolia. He like loves showing her off. Like that is so fun to him. And he just like loves the feeling of walking into a room with her on his arm. They arrive. Carmelo is like so excited to see them. He's like showing them around. Magnolia's like complimenting the place. Gia, Carmelo, and Romeo's sister decorated everything. It looks beautiful. Carmelo compliments Magnolia on the way she's been dressing Julian. He's looking real good. And then the boys, because Declan and Kiko are with them, obviously. They sit at the bar, and then Jules and Magnolia are at a table. And Magnolia's like, the boys aren't going to sit with us. And Julian's like, no. They are security, and so they don't always take their meals with us. And Magnolia's like, interesting. And then Jules mentions that he slept with Gia when they were 16, but she wasn't his first. His first was like some random girl in France. And then Magnolia's like, aren't you going to ask me about my first? And he's like, no. Obviously, he knows it was BJ, and he does not want to talk about that. And then Julian changes the subject and asks if Bridget likes him yet, because he's been working hard on convincing Miss Bridget Parks to like him. And Magnolia admits, not yet, but it's not because of his fault. It's because Bridget doesn't like their arrangement, doesn't like that they're just like kind of like sleeping together and won't put anything official on it. And then Julian says, what about you? Do you like our arrangement, Tiggs? Tiggs? I hate Tiggs. Tiggs doesn't sound cute. But she doesn't have a chance to answer because there's a blackout. The restaurant goes completely dark. And Julian grabs Magnolia, shoves her under the table, has his body like draped on top of her because he doesn't know what's happening. He's trying to listen, but it's just like completely silent. He can't hear anything going on. But he's like worried someone is coming for him. And Magnolia's like, what are you doing? What's going on? And he's like trying to shush her. And then Kikoa comes over, obviously. And he gives Magnolia to Kikoa, and he says, get her out of here. The lights come back on. They all go to the car. Turns out it was nothing. It was like a power outage. It was not anything scary. But at this point, Julian is not ready to go back inside and get dinner. Like, he's like quite rattled from everything that happened. Into dinner, he checks to make sure Magnolia is okay. She is fine. It was like really a false alarm. It just like really shook him up. And then Magnolia asks if Julian's okay. Like, she's like, what happened? Like, are you okay? Like, clearly he had like an overreaction to this event that was nothing, but like it could have been something in his defense. And Magnolia says, that was a slight overreaction to a power outage, was it not? And then they both look down and notice that his hands are shaking. And Julian says, I'm fine. And Magnolia goes, do you have PTSD? And Julian says, F you. And Magnolia goes, I beg your pardon. And Julian says, I said F you. And her face falls. Julian says it like this. Her face falls in a way that reminds me of the glaciers you see on the Discovery Channel. The crumbly confusion where she doesn't know what she's done or how she's done it. Julian goes on to say, sorry, I worried about you for half a second. It's gone now. It won't happen again. We're done. And then he's like, Kikoa, take her home. We're dropping her off at her house and I'm never seeing her again. And Magnolia's like, what's happening? And then he's like, we're over. We're done. And then she just like balls herself up as small as possible and like scoots as far away from Julian in the car as she can, because she's just like, I think surprised, but also like quite hurt by the fact that he's just like dropped her. And they pull up in front of her place. Jules opens the door for her, sends her on her way, doesn't even say another thing to her. The moment they pull away from the house, Kikoa's like, you're an idiot. Julian says, say that again. And Kikoa says, I feel like you are going to regret that. Julian says, I feel like you should shut up. And then Kikoa's like, by the way, you do have PTSD. So, which is reasonable based on all of the trauma you've had to endure over your life. So she wasn't throwing things that are like completely out of line. And then Kikoa is like, also, do you want to talk about the way you told me to take her? My job is to protect you and any extension of you. If you say that's her, like if she is an extension of you, fine. I will die for her then. But like, Jules, is that what we're doing? Like, what is this? And Julian's like, it's literally nothing. Didn't you see I just literally broke up with her? And Kikoa is like, I do not believe that you were actually done with her. And then we get some text between Daisy and Julian where Daisy asks that it's true. If it's true that Julian and Magnolia broke up. And Julian's like, we were never together. What do you mean? We couldn't have broke up because I was never dating her. And Daisy goes, do you want me to come up? And Julian says, nope. And Daisy texts, okay. And then another text, I left some cookies at your door. When I tell you, as I've said, and will say again, you could ask me on the lie detector, polygraph me up. Julian and Daisy Haites, the sibling relationship between these two, the like tension and love and the brother-sister and also like sort of father-daughter relationship between the two of them. It's my favorite thing in the entire world. Like, it's my favorite relationship in this whole series. I think it is so beautiful. Then we get to catch up with Magnolia, who is just like reeling, left on the curb by Kikoa. She like takes a few minutes. She just like stands out there on the curb and is like, what just happened? She's like honestly a little embarrassed, but she gathers herself. She goes up to the apartment. Bridget is there when she gets home, and Magnolia doesn't want to tell her what happened. She thinks to herself, it's quite a horrible feeling. Like, he used me how he wanted to use me, had his fill, and then threw me away. I don't really want to tell her. Kikoa texts her just to make sure she like got inside okay, that she's like safe and sound. That makes her even more confused. She's like, what's going on? And then she tells Bridget, she says, Julian and I are through. And Bridget obviously wants to know what happened, and Magnolia like kind of quickly recounts the night, and it's just like, it was like really weird. And Bridget is like, that's so rude. Anyway, are you going to text BJ? That was so rude and crazy. Should we call him? I can text him. I can get him on FaceTime if you want. You want me to call him for you? And Magnolia goes, do you think I should? And Bridget goes, for the love of God. She does text BJ, but Magnolia does not say that her and Julian broke up, but the vibes are still flirty. And then we get a BJ chapter, and it's a chapter in which BJ's over at Jonah's place and he's alone. Jordan is out with like her friends, and we kind of know things are super weird between the two of them. Apparently there was a DJ at Julian's New Year's Eve party that had been flirting with Jordan, and BJ had seen him slip Jordan his number, and he just like ignored it because he like literally doesn't care. And there were pictures that were on the cover of the Daily Mail of the two of them together, which was like a little embarrassing. And Jordan saw BJ see the pictures, like they came up on his phone while Jordan was sitting next to him, and she kind of like waited for him to say something, and he didn't say anything. And then later she says, we have a weird relationship, don't we? I don't mind. And BJ's kind of like, you know what, honestly, the DJ doesn't really feel like my business, which is crazy. Anyway, he arrives at Jonah's. It's a full house. It's Joe, Tara, Henry, Christian, and Magnolia, and Georgia. And we know Georgia because Georgia Carter is the protagonist of the standalone book by Jessa Hastings called The Conditions of Will, which is so good. If you haven't read it, I would really, really recommend it. It's like a very different story than Magnolia Parks, but also has like that same Jessa Hastings like writing style. I think it's really good. And so I know that Georgia Carter is a body language analyst. So I just like would love to know what she's reading between the two of them, because I'm sure it's wild. Anyway, Magnolia corners BJ in the kitchen so soon after he arrives, and she says, say sorry to me. And BJ says, for what? And Magnolia goes, I don't know. I just feel cross at you, and I feel like you should say sorry to me. And BJ says, actually cross, or you want attention cross? And Magnolia says, the second one. And they wind up doing their little staring thing, which is, you know, something they've done throughout the books, where they like stare at each other to like reconnect. And BJ keeps interrupting them to like flirt. He like tells Magnolia she's pretty, and then she's like, no talking, we have to start over. And then he like is touching her face, pretending that she has eyelashes on it. She doesn't. And it just like goes back and forth. And then Henry walks into the kitchen with Georgia. Oh no, but right before that, BJ admits during this like staring contest that he's had his first tattoo removal session. He's getting the tattoos of like the dead deer removed. Bless his heart. And while this is happening, while the staring contest is happening, Henry and Georgia walk into the room, and Georgia is like, what the heck is going on? And Henry's like, just ignore them. I think it's the best for everyone. And then afterwards, Magnolia and BJ wind up sitting next to each other on this like tiny couch, and Magnolia tells BJ that her and Jules are over. And BJ is like, woohoo! Obviously, best news ever. And then somehow the topic comes up of like, what is the weirdest place that you've slept with someone? And they go around in a circle trying to like say this. And I just think this is a bad topic if we really want BJ and Magnolia back together. Like, you want BJ to recount some of these places? But it like turns out okay. Because BJ says that him and Magnolia used to hook up in the cupboard under the stairs at Marley. And he recounts a couple places they used to hook up when they were together, when they were in school. And like all these kind of like weird places around their boarding school. And then the group starts listing all the crazy places Magnolia's been with someone. And she's like very embarrassed by it. And they're talking about places that she's been with like Julian and with Tom England and with Rush Evans, like the other boys that she's slept with. And Georgia, again, is very confused. She does not know if BJ and Magnolia are together or not. Like, again, just like perplexed. Would love to know what's happening in her mind. And BJ looks over at Magnolia and can tell that she's like really kind of like shattered by this conversation around all the places that she slept with men that are not BJ. Like, it feels like a betrayal, and he knows that it feels like a betrayal to her. And he thinks, my mind's going a million miles an hour trying to work out how to tell her that I don't care, that it doesn't matter to me even if it does, that I still love her the same, that nothing could undo how much I want her. I want her in an unchangeable way, even if loving her right now feels like a foot pressing down on my throat. And Parks, she's just staring at me, watching my face. Before I even look at her, I know she's nervous, sad almost. I can feel it on her. I swallow, think quick, try to let her know it's okay without saying the words. I lean over, breathe her in. You smell different. Is it new? She glances over at me, eyes quiet. Weird day absence. Louis Vuitton. I hold her eyes down. Ugh, the like caretaking of Magnolia in this moment from BJ. That was like the final stop for BJ. BJ is like, I'm gonna end things for real with Jordan because now she's not with Julian. We can get back together. It's gonna be our time. It's gonna be our time. Woohoo! He needs to be available to Parks, because he wants the next time they're together to not be cheating on Jordan because he almost kissed her that night at Jonah's, but he like knew he couldn't. Only snag in this, he would have done it right away when he got home, but only snag in this is he has a birthday trip planned for his birthday with Jordan, and they got like a bunch of sponsorships because remember BJ is an influencer, and he doesn't really care. Like, she can still go on the trip, she could take her DJ with him, but like he wants to kind of like sort that out and like make sure to like let her down gently, because that's kind of rough to be like, one, we're not together anymore, two, we were supposed to go on vacation together next week, and so he's just trying to do this in a way that is kind. But unfortunately, when BJ arrives at the club, Magnolia is looking gorgeous. She's in this like tiny little white dress. And he's like, I should have broken up with Jordan. Screw being kind to her. Like, hello, I should have broken up with her. And he's pissed he didn't already break up with her. Especially because Magnolia deflates. He can just like see her like the moment he shows up with Jordan on his arm. And Jordan has brought a friend with her. And Magnolia is like trying to be polite to the girls. But everything she says is kind of scathing and cutting. And Jordan asks Magnolia about Jules, and Magnolia tells her they aren't together anymore. And then Jordan, sensing danger, so this is what's happening. I would love to get a chapter from Jordan's head, but we know what's happening in Jordan's head. Jordan knows that she's got a good thing with BJ. He's not requiring her to be loyal, but also he is helpful, and she likes being around him, and she knows that Magnolia is the number one choice. And she knows that if Magnolia is available, that puts her relationship at risk. So she does what she needs to do. And she says to Magnolia, oh my gosh, we have this Italian vacation coming up next week. And BJ's trying to convey with his eyeballs that Magnolia, I'm not going on this trip with this girl. Okay? I can't say that in front of her right now, but read my eyes. Magnolia doesn't read it in his eyes. I don't even know if she looks at him. Because at that moment, there's a commotion from the other side of the bar. And Julian is shoving Carmelo Brambillo. And you know what Magnolia does? She runs to the middle of these two gang lords. She stands on a table so she's taller than Julian. And she grabs Julian's face. And BJ is like, I could literally throw up. I can't follow her after this because the boys will kill me. I actually can't get between Carmelo and Julian because I will be dead. I will be dead. And Magnolia doesn't know how dangerous it is because it isn't really that dangerous for Magnolia. Everyone kind of knows that. He watches Parks calm Julian down, hands on his chest, hands on his face, and BJ is beside himself because it seems like there really is something serious between them. There's clearly some sort of emotional connection between Magnolia and Julian, and it makes him want to curl up in a hole and die. And so he does what BJ always does. He grabs Jordan, he takes her to the car, and he sleeps with her. And he does not break up with her. We get to see this perspective from Christian's point of view next. And Christian and Henry had gotten ready before this club night at Magnolia's house. She's pretty clearly not been doing well after the Julian breakup, and she can't be alone, which is why she invited the boys over in the first place. She's literally asking them about what lip color she should wear. They're not really the audience for this. Bridget's hiding in the kitchen and explains that Magnolia had slept in her bed last night because she just can't be alone even while she's sleeping. And Christian's I think she fancied him. And Bridget's yeah, no duh, you freaking idiot. Though I think she'd fancy a doorknob if it made her stop thinking about BJ. And Christian says, I don't know. I don't know if this was about BJ. And Bridget says, everything about her. God, Christian, you of all people should know, everything about my sister is about BJ. Magnolia finally comes downstairs in her dress. Christian says to Magnolia, he'll die when he sees you in it. And Magnolia says, who will? Christian says, either of them? Neither of them? Both of them? And Bridget winds up smoothing everything over and being maybe you should stay home. Smooths everything over. Luckily, we avoid this situation with Christian. Christian's ready to go. Daisy is going to be there, and he's excited he's going to get to see her. And Bridget suggests that maybe Magnolia should just stay home tonight instead of going to the club and seeking validation from these men who reject her like, she needs a minute to, like, stay home and process her emotions, Bridget suggests. And Magnolia is like, you are so funny, Bridget. I needed that. Thank you. As soon as they arrive, Magnolia spots Julian, and Henry takes Magnolia to the bar, and Julian starts talking to Bianca Harrington. Daisy is chatting with people that Christian doesn't know, so he follows Henry and Magnolia to the bar, but then there's an ignoring girl at the bar, so pretty quickly he ends up next to Daisy. Christian explains that Magnolia isn't doing great, and Henry and him had to get ready with her, and, like, you know, Magnolia's kind of torn up about her brother. They look back at the bar. Magnolia is now standing next to BJ, like, touching the collar of his shirt. So she's like, I think she's okay. Christian then goes to talk to Julian, and he's like, hey, are you good? I heard about the breakup. And Julian's like, yeah, I'm fine, obviously. Why wouldn't I be? Don't be weird. Tensions are, like, high in the Haites corner of things. And then Carmelo asks what's going on, because he hears Julian and Christian talking. And Declan explains that Jules and Magnolia are over. And Carmelo goes, really? What happened? And Julian's, like, getting pissy now. He's insisting that, like, nothing happened. They were ever together. So, like, how could they break up? His favorite. And Carmelo's like, you guys are done? And Julian says, yeah. And Carmelo goes, wait, then do you mind if I take her out for a spin? And Julian says, what did you say? And Carmelo goes, well, if you're done with her, just flick her my number, yeah? She's, like, stupid hot. I want to turn. I mean, she's got a tiny rack, but she'd be a decent smash. Daisy tenses up because she knows this is not going to go well. And both boys wind up standing up. Julian shoves Carmelo. There's, like, shoving back and forth. Carmelo just, like, keeps pushing this button. And Daisy's like, Julian. And Jules is like, I can't deal with you right now. Face, sit down. Carmelo keeps pushing. He says he's going to go talk to Magnolia and tries to push past Julian. And then Jules grabs him by the collar of his shirt. And then Magnolia is suddenly, like, on the table. Christian thinks she doesn't see dangerous situations and runs from them. She runs right to them. And I reckon a huge part of that is because BJ always just charges in straight after her. Chaotic childhoods, nothing really sure about her life until him. So she runs into the chaos and finds him in it. But BJ, he's standing here now on the sidelines of this, his face like a cracked egg as he watches her duck a bit so she's eye level with a man who isn't him. Puts her hand on his chest to steady him. I look away. It's hard to watch your friends get hurt, and I've got a front row seat. And Magnolia's just like, Julian, stop. What are you doing? He's your best friend. And Julian, like, lets go of Carmelo. He's immediately soothed by Magnolia. Christian turns back around to see how BJ is reacting to this, but BJ's already gone. He's already left. And then Julia says to Magnolia, come on, come home with me now. And Magnolia looks back for BJ, but he's already gone. And so she agrees to go home with Jules. And then Christian lets Daisy go because he had grabbed her so she didn't get in the middle of the fight. Then suggests they go hook up in Joe's office. And then we get texts between Julian and Carmelo in which Carmelo is apologizing for overstepping in terms of Magnolia, because typically that sort of conversation would be okay, because Julian has never loved a girl before, but he loves Magnolia, so obviously it's not okay. And Carmelo's like, I didn't realize, like, my bad. And Jules like, it's cool, I, like, didn't tell you, it, like, really snuck up on me. And it's unclear if Magnolia knows that Julian is a little bit in love with her. Then we get a Magnolia chapter in which we see kind of we don't see the scene again, but we see the aftermath of the scene. She talks about how easy it was to walk away from BJ after learning that he was going to Italy with Jordan. It was, like, nice for her to be needed, she thinks. She talks about how BJ doesn't need her, even though she needs him. He's got a good family, but she's like, I'm all alone. I don't have the kind of family infrastructure that he has. And so, like, he doesn't need me. As she was leaving with Julian, she had seen BJ's car and had seen the fogged up windows and knew that he was hooking up with Jordan in the car. And then as they're, like, headed home, Julian tells her that he sees a psychiatrist for all of it. The worry about his sister, his parents dying in front of them, like, the PTSD, he's like, yeah, you're right. That, like, really did rattle me. And, like, I talked to someone about it. Like, you were right. Okay. A few days later, her and Jules grab brunch with Bridget and Gus. Bridget is still pretending not to like Julian, which Magnolia doesn't buy because everyone loves Julian. They're, like, currently chatting about China's role in the international economic policy, and he's trying to win Bridget over, and Magnolia thinks it's terribly boring. Magnolia has a terrible take about how, like, the aspirational class, like, relates to all of this, and Bridget is like, how have you not been canceled? And Magnolia says, I don't adhere to cancel culture. I think it's anti-progressive and positively draconian. And Bridget says, didn't you cancel Paley? And Magnolia says, no. Britain canceled Paley. And then Julian wants to know what happened between Gus and Jack. Magnolia ends up going to the bathroom and drags Bridget along with her. And Magnolia's like, I really want you to like Julian. But Bridget is like, it doesn't matter if I like him or not. You're going to end up with BJ. Like, so why would I put the effort in now? Bridget refuses to give her approval and explains that Magnolia only wants Bridget's approval because she never got any parental approval, but she does tell Magnolia that she does like him. Like, he is charming. Can't deny it. Julian gets a phone call almost as soon as they get back to the table, and he, like, leaves to go chat. And Gus is like, what are you doing? You're doing it again. That man is head over heels in love with you. Like, what are you doing, Magnolia? Get it together. And Magnolia argues with him that that's not what's happening. And Bridget also, like, is on Gus's team and is like, no, that man is, like, a little bit obsessed with you. So watch what you're doing. And Magnolia's like, no, he's not. He dropped me on a curb in the middle of the night. And Bridget's like, it was 9 p.m. and it was in front of our apartment. And Magnolia goes, he doesn't love me. He doesn't look at me like... And Bridget goes, BJ? That can't be the benchmark. No one is going to look at you the way BJ looks at you. And Gus says, you kind of siren them in with those eyes, and then they love you, and then they're miserable because you've only ever loved one boy, and one day you will, God willing, sort yourselves out and be together. And then you're going to break his little gang lord heart. And Magnolia goes, are you kidding? That's Julian Haites. I couldn't break his heart if I hit it with a sledgehammer. And Gus goes, baby girl, you are the sledgehammer. And then we get some text between Jonah and Magnolia, in which Jonah asks if Magnolia needs a ride to BJ's birthday dinner. And she's like, what birthday dinner? She doesn't know anything about this because she wasn't invited. And we come to find out that Jordan planned this birthday dinner, and Jonah feels really bad about it because obviously Jonah didn't know she wasn't invited, but, like, Jordan didn't invite Magnolia. It's BJ's birthday. Jordan planned it and put it all on BJ's card. So, like, BJ knew it was happening. It was, like, supposed to be a surprise, but, like, it wasn't really. The table is full when he arrives, but he, like, only is eager to see what Magnolia is wearing because Magnolia always dresses, like, really spectacularly for his birthday, but always, like, in red or pink because his birthday is on Valentine's Day and she loves a theme. And he's like, I wonder what she got me as a present. I wonder what it's going to be like. I wonder what she's going to say to me. I wonder what she's going to look like. Like, he is just thinking about Magnolia. And he arrives there and he's like, Magnolia's not here yet. She must be late, but there's no chair for her. And BJ turns to Jonah and goes, where's Parks? And Jonah goes, Jordan planned this. And BJ goes, she wasn't invited? And then he like talks to Jordan about this. And Jordan's like, yeah, last time you saw her, you seemed like really upset with like her. So, like, I didn't invite her. It like seems like it upsets you when you're around her. I like didn't think she deserved to be invited. And BJ's like freaking out because, like, obviously he wants Magnolia there. He wants Magnolia with him all the time. If he could glue Magnolia's hand to his hand, he would. We get a recounting of his 17th birthday in which he went to Mykonos with the girls, which was like one of his worst birthdays. We hear this is like a bad birthday. This one's a worse birthday. So BJ is 17, turning 17. So Magnolia is like either 15 or 16. And Magnolia had packed a bunch of lingerie. They hadn't slept together yet, but BJ like kept pushing it off. Like he wasn't ready. And Parks was upset because he kept telling her no, that he didn't want to sleep with her. And so the girls left the boys. The boys went out on a boat day and the girls, Paley and Magnolia, like stayed back and hung out at the resort. Parks and Paley went to a nightclub that night and they got very drunk and they got into a like tricky situation. And Parks tried to call BJ, but he didn't have service because he was out on the boat. And when they get back to the mainland, it's late and he pulls out his phone. He has a bunch of missed calls from Parks and voicemails where she's crying and she's talking about Paley and this guy, and someone snatches her phone at the end of one of the last voicemails, and they wind up finding her phone on accident, just like on the side of the road. They're able to find that, but there's no sign of them. They're running all over looking for them. It's Henry, BJ, Christian, and Jonah. They finally find them on the beach, Paley and Magnolia, with 4 older guys. Parks is crying and screaming, and as soon as she sees BJ, she starts shouting for him. And BJ still has dreams where she's calling his name and he can't get to her. Jonah, Henry, Christian, and BJ go fight them. It's like a pretty nasty fight. BJ like confirms she is okay. Nothing happened. Magnolia explains that they got there before anything could really happen. The men had been like holding them down and kissing them, but like nothing had escalated past that. And BJ afterwards like refuses to hold her hand or to sit with her. He sends her to sleep with Henry because he doesn't want her in his bed tonight. And at 3 a.m. he finally heads to Henry's room because he hasn't been able to sleep a wink without her. And BJ is like, what were you thinking? And Magnolia goes, I was sad. And she tries to hook up with BJ again, and he's like, not like this. Like, you are not ready. And I don't want it to get a response to this event. And they end up sleeping together a few weeks later. And he then talks about another birthday where that was a bad birthday in which he didn't get to spend it with her because she was with Christian. But she had left him a little DeLorean on his pillow, and she'd known there was been no note, but he had known it was from Magnolia because they had watched Back to the Future right before they had broken up, and he had gotten that tattooed on him the next weekend. At the end of the current birthday dinner, Henry gives him a gift box and tells BJ that it's from Magnolia, and BJ tells Henry to make sure that she knows that he did not know that she was not invited. He's like, please, everyone, tell Magnolia that I would have invited her. He waits till he's home and alone to open it. He goes in the bathroom, locks himself in there, opens the gift box, and it's a watch that says, on borrowed time without you, engraved into it, and a note that says, I don't think I'll ever stop looking for a time machine until I find one. Here's a timekeeper instead. And BJ, again, thinks about breaking up with Jordan, but he, can't do it. He can't be the first one to fold. My dum-dum sweet babies. And then we get some text between Magnolia and Bridget about Magnolia not being invited to BJ's birthday, and Bridget is like, go to Julian's. He'll make you feel better. So Magnolia shows up at Julian's. Jonah called and explained that BJ didn't know and that he would have been upset to know that she wasn't there. Henry had told her to come anyway, but it's too embarrassing. The thought of showing up at his birthday unwanted, she just can't stomach it. She heads straight into Julian's office, and Julian is surprised she's not with BJ on his birthday, and she explains that she wasn't invited, and Julian says, are you okay? She's dressed in the outfit she bought while thinking about BJ taking it off of her, and that's the problem. She, loves BJ too much. Every thought is about him. Magnolia just holds her arms up over her head as a signal for Julian to take her clothes off. Julian kicks Declan out. He's in the office, and he starts taking her clothes off, and Magnolia is musing about how much she loves the feeling of being with Julian's and how safe she feels with Jules. She comments on a more recent scar on Julian, and he explains that he got it cage fighting. Julian says, I'm sorry he didn't invite you. Magnolia says, Julian, do you think I'm lying here half naked to talk to you about BJ? Stop talking. After they finish, Julian comments that Magnolia thinks about BJ while they're together, and he can tell. And Magnolia goes, I try not to. And then Magnolia asks if he's ever thinking about anyone else, asks if he's ever been in love. And Julian says, I can't be in love. That's why you're here. I'm no strings. And Magnolia says, there are some string. Jules says, in another life, I reckoned I could have loved you. In another life, Magnolia says, I would have let you. And I do think about this quote once a week. And if Jessa Hastings does not give Julian a happily ever after, it will destroy me. It'll destroy me. He deserves one. I, fear that he will be murdered. And I also fear that he's never going to get a happy ending. And that would hurt my feelings too much. It would hurt my feelings too much. I need him to, fall deeply, madly, profoundly in love. Please. Then Julian asks her what it is like to love someone the way she loves BJ. And Magnolia says it's bad because she doesn't even really belong to herself anymore. She says, he's in everything. I'm always thinking about him, and I want to know what he thinks. I want to know what he wants, and I worry about how he feels and whether he's safe and what he's doing. With him, I think about all the hands that have been on his body that aren't mine. He's not my every second thought. He's my every thought. He infiltrates all of them, all of my decisions, all of my feelings. And Julian goes, I'd hate that. And Magnolia goes, yeah, you would. And then Magnolia asks him what it's like to be a gang lord. And Julian brings up the fact that she dated Christian, who is also not the very head of a crime family, but high up in a crime family. And she explains that the boys really isolate her and shield her from all the crime side of what they do because they think she's too delicate. She's like, it's probably because I'm named after a flower or something. And Julian says it's very tiring. And Magnolia says, do you like it? And Julian says it was never a choice. It's just the hand I was dealt. Magnolia goes, you don't actually hurt people, right? A bit, but not really, do you? And Julian goes, nah, I'm all talk. This scene literally carve out one of my ribs and hit me on the head with it. We get the same scene from Julian's perspective, and he's thinking about the fact that he doesn't like Magnolia's not here, and then she arrives, and he can tell immediately as soon as she shows up that she's really upset, and he's ready. He could beat up BJ for hurting her in this way. They're immediately crashing around the room, breaking stuff. I don't think I mentioned this when I was reading through the scene when I was going through the scene in Magnolia's perspective, but they dent this vase, and then they break this 100K vase. And Julian says, I would pay twice that to be here with you. Also, we learned that the cage fighting line about the newest scar is a lie. I think it's from where he'd been shot. Okay. Again, for good measure, we're going to get one of my other favorite lines in this series. In another life, I reckoned I could have loved you, I tell her. She gives me a little smile back. In another life, I would have let you. Never mind that I already love her in this one. Yeah, so from Julian's perspective, we learn that, like, Julian is, like, firmly in love with Magnolia Parks. I mean, we've been knowing, but we get Daisy's perspective. Daisy got to go to the birthday dinner with Christian. Christian just spends the dinner, like, bragging about her. And he talks about how he started reading a book on the pre-Raphaelites, and because that's one of her interests. And Daisy thinks to herself, I wonder if there's a chance that maybe he likes me how I want him to. The vibe is weird at dinner in general, but, like, Daisy's having a lovely time, but also, like, I don't know what's happening with the rest of the table. But Daisy is looking really cute in an outfit that Magnolia did pick out for her. They get home, and Daisy walks in on Julian and Magnolia naked in her brother's office, post the scene we just saw. They, like, wrap themselves in a rug, and she yells at Julian for denting the one vase and breaking the other. And then Magnolia asks Christian how the dinner went, and he says it was fine. And he knows that clearly, like, she's very sad. She's very hurt that she wasn't invited. And then Magnolia notices Daisy is wearing the bag that she bought her for Valentine's Day, and she is delighted. And Daisy goes, why did you get me a Valentine's Day present? And Magnolia says, I love gifts. Julian, did you get me anything? And Julian's like, we aren't together. And Magnolia's a bit sad until he admits that he did pick her up some earrings, but they're just, like, a general present. They're not a Valentine's Day present. Then Magnolia comments on the fact that Christian is being stupid. And Daisy is, like, a little bit offended because Daisy interprets that to mean that, like, Magnolia thinks Christian is stupid for, like, sleeping with her. And Magnolia clarifies, you're sleeping together incredibly casually. Meanwhile, Christian's over here with very strong feelings of affection for you. And Daisy goes, how do you know? Christian turns to Daisy and says, how do you not know? I literally told you on New Year's Eve. I said it right to your face. And Daisy's like, you didn't say it that clearly. And then Christian says, let me be clear now then, Daisy. I am messed up in love with you. Have never stopped loving you since the second I realized I did. And I admit it. It took me too long to know it, but I know it now. I can't unknow it. I don't want to unknow it. I want to be with you, and I'll do whatever I need to make us work. You want me to leave London for you? Great, I'm in. You want me to quit, not have anything to do with this stuff? He gestures around us. Fine, that's fine. I don't care. Whatever it is, I'll do it. And then Daisy looks over and sees Julian smiling at her. Soft, like your face might go when you see someone you love get everything they've ever wanted. And then Julian and Magnolia leave. There's a bunch of Magnolia banter, and half of it is in the footnotes of this section, and it is really cute. I'm not going to read it to you because, girl, this video's already long enough, but trust me, it's adorbs. And then Daisy tells Christian she loves him too, and it's very sweet. Also, she confesses that Magnolia is growing on her. Back to BJ. He's sad. He's not having a nice time. No, I think at no point in this book is everyone having a nice time. If someone is having a nice time, someone else is having a low, low time. BJ is really sad about the birthday thing. But then he hears that Magnolia and Julian are, like, back together from Christian. So he's like, at least I didn't end things with Jordan. I would have left me high and dry. Betty, if you would have ended things with Jordan, Magnolia wouldn't have gone back to Julian. They're so dumb. Like, the math is so basic, guys. You think at this point they would have gotten it, but they can't get it through. They're thick little nogs. They're having dinner together. Julian and Magnolia are supposed to be there, but they arrive very late. Magnolia arrives looking quite messy and says they had a mishap in the car, but Julian is smirking. He's smirking. We know what kind of mishap it was. Magnolia's shoe broke in the whatever they were up to. And so now she's in black heels. And Daisy points it out, like, those are just, like, black heels. Like, they look fine as your outfit. And Magnolia's like, no, I really would have preferred, like, a cerulean or, like, a butter yellow. And then Jordan announces that she and BJ are headed to Italy in the morning for the birthday trip. And Magnolia is unhappy about that, which makes BJ unhappy. And then Julian is like, we haven't been to the lake house in ages. We should go. So they're headed to my favorite place on earth. I've never been there. Let's be clear. I've never been to Lake Como or the Haites lake house in Lake Como because I don't think the lake house does exist, but I know it would be my happiest place on earth. Take me to the lakes where all the gang lords go to vacation. Again, have never been there, but I, like, desperately need to be in Lake Como. Every time I read this book and Lake Como is brought up, I'm like, I need to be there. I, like, really have a strong affinity for lakes in general. If you've seen some of my other videos on my channel, I talked about my favorite book from last year being Tom Lake, which I am re-listening to because I'm obsessed with it. And that's also a lake book. I love a lake. I need to be lakefront. Goal for the summer, get me in front of a lake, ideally in Italy, in a villa. But that's not looking good. Financially, I don't know if I can like fund a villa Lake Como trip for myself, but I will be at a lake. Then we get a chapter in which Christian and Daisy are meeting Henry and Tara for drinks. I guess this must be like after the dinner, or maybe it wasn't a dinner, maybe it was like a lunch. Maybe it was a brunch. The timeline here doesn't make a lot of sense because they decide they're going to Lake Como. It seems like like the night before. And then we get this whole event that's before they go to Lake Como. I don't know, maybe they're getting drinks post-dinner. But why do they separate and come back together? IDK. But anyway, Daisy and Christian meet Henry and Tara for drinks. Henry is just so delighted to see Daisy and Christian together. He orders them a bottle of champagne. Daisy and Christian are officially boyfriend and girlfriend. Tara and Henry haven't put a label on anything because Jonah's still in the love triangle. And then we like have this discussion about the Lake Como trip coming up. Girls, didn't you just decide this like 1 minute ago? I'm confused about this chapter and where it fits in the timeline. Everyone's going. Including Banksy, who's like Jonah's special friend. I don't know. It's very confusing. They're excited about this. This chapter does nothing except to like serve as like a reminder, I think, in the Daisy Haites books that they're going on this Lake Como trip with everyone. Back to BJ's perspective. They fly out the next morning for Lake Como on Magnolia's plane. Jonah, Julian, Daisy, and Christian sit in the front and talk about ganglord stuff. But BJ is like, I'm not stupid. I'm sitting with Magnolia. He's wearing a hoodie that Magnolia bought for him. And she just like left a bunch of clothes on his bed the other day, which is just like something she does. And Jordan is sitting on his lap. Magnolia is sitting across the like row from him, just like staring at him, pissed off that Jordan is in his lap, which seems unsafe for plain reasons. Jonah, meanwhile, is sitting with Bianca Harrington, who is Banksy. And this is the girl BJ swears Jonah is actually in love with. Interesting. They arrive at the Lake Como house. Magnolia walks in and comments about how much she loves it. And BJ notes that she's never impressed by anything, just to give us a sense of scale. He's like, she walked into Versailles and was like, I think there's too much gold. So like this house is just like perfection. And I know that because this is my favorite place in the world. To live at the Haites Lake Como house. My truest aspiration in life. Magnolia then says, in reference to the house, wow, how good is dirty money? I guess it's true. Crime really does pay. And they're like, Magnolia, that's not even the saying. Julian tells everyone to find their bedroom. He gets the master bedroom. He bickers with Daisy a little bit about it. And then Julian winds up carrying Magnolia to their bedroom, and it does make BJ sick. It is like very like upsetting to both of them, BJ and Magnolia, that they are in the same house sleeping with other people. Like, it does something to their head. It doesn't feel good. Later, they're laying out by the pool with heaters, because remember, I think it's February, right? It was right after BJ's birthday, so it's like February 17th. It's probably like right now. Right now, as I'm filming this, it's February 19th. I'm probably real time with the Lake Como house. Ugh. What a dream. I wish I was there. They're laying out by the pool. Magnolia is wearing her lilac bikini. And lilac is BJ's favorite color to see Magnolia in. So he kind of suspects that she wore it for him. Probably she did. And Parks texts him, what are you staring at? And he explains about the party again. And Magnolia's like, that was very mean of Jordan. And BJ goes, can you blame her? And Magnolia calls her a bitch. And BJ defends her, saying that, like, you know, at the end of the day, Jordan is his girlfriend, so please don't call her names. And BJ's like, you don't have a leg to stand on. You're dating Julian. And Magnolia corrects it to sleeping with. They're not dating. They're just sleeping together. And BJ knows things are about to get ugly. Things are, like, escalating in a way that, like, ooh, things couldn't get good. Things might get worse. But then Christian, Daisy, Henry, and Tara return from the lake and announce that it's time for dinner. After dinner, they watch Jurassic Park, except BJ just spends the whole night watching Magnolia, making sure they both can stay awake through the whole movie, so then they can sneak off together. They're well practiced at this. They end up in the kitchen. Jordan has already headed upstairs. Julian is going to help. They need to, like, do cleanup. See, if I worked there, I could clean up all the dishes for you. Daisy could cook. I will do dishes at the end of the night. You guys enjoy Jurassic Park. Don't even mind me. Like, I don't need anything from these people. I will figure out, I'll get a little job in town to pay for my groceries. I just need use of your house. And I'll work for you for free when you come stay here. I don't want you to have to do dishes. I will take care of it. Please just let me live at your house. Anyway, Julian gets a call and BJ says, I'll help her with the dishes. I'll take care of it. And Julian's like, okay. And then he tells Magnolia, he's like, wake me up when you come to bed. Girl, you're going to get on the phone, go upstairs, and go immediately to sleep? That's kind of crazy. How long are the dishes going to take? If I was there, no time at all. It would really solve this problem. Anyway, they're doing dishes, and Magnolia's talking about how nice it is that Julian needs her, and BJ's like, I need you. But she's like, you seem to fulfill that need with lots of other girls. And she's reminiscing, and then Magnolia starts reminiscing about what they were like when they were kids together. And Magnolia says to BJ, I would have done anything for you, cheated for you, lied for you. I would have died for you. I think maybe I kind of did. Did you ever imagine it? That we'd be the ones who'd hurt each other more than anyone else. And BJ goes, no. And Magnolia goes, sad, isn't it? BJ says, we could stop. Magnolia goes, how? Tell me how, and I'll do it. And BJ says, break up with him. Be the first to wave the white flag. And Magnolia goes, no. And BJ says, why no? You don't trust me? And Magnolia says, how could I trust you? And BJ says, I'd die for you. And Magnolia says, that I believe. I too trust you with my life. And BJ says, just not your heart. And Magnolia goes, just not my heart. She kisses his cheek, and BJ thinks to himself, I let her. Close my eyes, let it make me feel everything Jordan hasn't made me feel ever. Breathe her in. Beg her to marry me 50 times in a second, but I can't out loud because Parks doesn't trust me, and I don't think I am good enough anyway. I don't think there's anything I can do to make her trust me other than time, and I will give her all of mine. I don't care about that. I'm not even worried we'll never get off this track. I don't care. I'll stay on it forever with her. I am worried, though, that she'll figure it out and get off without me. She pulls away from me, and as she does, I slip my heart into her back pocket. That's a lie. She already has it. But I give it to her again for good measure. And then BJ, as she's like leaving, he says, can you do me a favor? Don't wake him up. Then we get a Daisy chapter, and this Daisy chapter includes Mama Haites, Alicia. And I have a fairly short list of like characters that I like truly hate. Who, if I saw them, I would actually have to physically fight them because they make me angry in my bones. And Mama Haites is one of those characters. If I saw Mama Haites in a dark alley, I would break her nose. And I do think she'd probably be better at fighting than me, and I do think she would hurt me. It wouldn't matter. I like need to break her nose. I need to break her nose. Daisy is remembering coming to Lake Como House as a kid when she was probably like 6 years old. And there's this one day in which she was supposed to have like a mommy-daughter day because Julian and Hadrian, her dad, were having like a father-son day. They left around like 8 a.m. and Daisy went upstairs to like wake up her mom. And her mom's like, I'm too tired. Like, go down and entertain yourself. I will come down after I've gotten a little more sleep. Daisy stays downstairs for a while, and at like 11 a.m. her mom finally comes downstairs and tells 6-year-old Daisy that she is going shopping. And she's like, I know shopping is so boring to you, so you don't need to come. And Daisy's like, but no one else is at the house. Like, I can't be here by myself. And so Alicia asks the gardener to watch Daisy for a couple hours. Immediately, Daisy does not like the gardener. He's bad vibes, but he gives her snacks. He sets her up in front of a movie, but he sits like too close to her. He's like sitting like right next to her, touching her, and she's uncomfortable. And then he starts to like tickle her, and she's feeling uncomfortable. And so she asks him to play hide and seek with her, and he agrees. And she's really good at hiding because Julian and her father trained her to hide really well. They would have her hide and then like critique her hiding spots. They'd be like, that's not a good hiding spot. Like, I can see you from this angle, or I can hear you. They would give her hints like run up the stairs and then slide down the banister silently. So like they will think you're upstairs, but you aren't. Like, they really have, from the time she was like incredibly young, taught her to hide to keep her safe. And so Daisy runs up the stairs, and when she hears the man follow her, she slides down the laundry chute, runs out the back door, and climbs into a cabinet on their boat where they keep the life vests. And it's not until hours later that Julian finds her. She doesn't know how much time has passed. She's fallen asleep. And as soon as Julian finds her, he's shouting her name. Daisy comes out, and she says, is the game over? And Jules goes, yeah, Daisy, the game's over now. And he asks her why she hid, and Daisy kind of explains that the man had wanted to play tickles, and she didn't like it. And Julian brings Daisy inside, passes her off to her dad, and her mom is like, see, she's fine. No big deal. And Julian has the gardener pinned to the wall, like by his throat. Julian at the time is, I think, like 16 or 17 at the time. And he says to this man, you touched my baby sister. Julian is going to kill this man. And the dad has Daisy explain what happened and how her mom had left her alone all morning and then left her with the gardener so she could go shopping. And Daisy explains the tickling situation, and Dad pulls a gun out. He's holding Daisy, mind you. He's got Daisy in one hand, pulls a gun out of his pocket, shoots the gardener twice in the face, and then points the gun at the mom's forehead. Okay. Julian and Kiko are trying to talk Hadrian down. They're like, hey, this is maybe not the best vibe in front of Daisy. Also, you can't do that to your wife. And then Julian is like, at least give me Daisy. Give me Daisy. And as soon as Julian has Daisy, Adrian has two hands free and he grabs Mama Haites and shoves her up against the wall. Julian runs with Daisy upstairs. They lock themselves in a bedroom. They turn the TV up full blast. Anyway, so the vibes are weird at the house, and Daisy is in the bedroom that they were in when this happened, and she's thinking about it, and Magnolia walks by and sees Daisy sitting in this bedroom, and she's wearing a cardigan that Magnolia bought her, and she's looking really off, and Magnolia notices this and asks Daisy about it, and Daisy kind of vaguely explains the story we just heard, and she explains that after that, things were never the same between her and her mother, and never between her father and her mother either, but Leisha didn't leave because she loved Hadrian and she loved Julian. And Magnolia says, she probably loved you too. And Daisy says, no. And then Magnolia is like, I don't know the details. I know your parents were killed, but I don't know the details about it. And Daisy explains that they were killed in front of them and the men had tried to kill her and Julian too. And Julian had saved them by killing those men. Daisy explains that her father dove in front of her instead of his wife, and Daisy has always blamed herself a bit for his death. And Magnolia says, that's your mind playing tricks on you. But it's not true. It wasn't your fault. And Magnolia tells Daisy about Billy, and about how she's 24 now and knows that nothing she did killed this baby, but sometimes it feels like it did. And she talks about how when she was that young, she hadn't been very healthy. She was like, I was very thin, I was too thin. And Daisy's like, you were in high school. And Magnolia says, I know that, and you know that. And when you hear that, you know obviously that I didn't, but sometimes if I were to listen to the wrong parts of my mind, it can feel like I did. So even if it feels like that's what happened with your mom, it wasn't your fault. I know that it wasn't, okay? And she explains that Christian knows about Billy, but Julian does not. And she would really appreciate if Daisy didn't tell him. And Magnolia is like, I just have this awful feeling that if he were to know, the secret decency he has that just you and I know about might activate, and he'll do the right thing and end things with me. And Daisy goes, should he? Magnolia goes, probably, but not yet. And Daisy is at once she's kind of annoyed that Magnolia is using her brother, but she also knows what it is to feel safe with him and to need something like that after a bad breakup. And Daisy says to her, I'm sorry that happened to you. And Magnolia goes, I'm sorry that happened to you too. I love it so much. It's a really cute moment between Daisy and Magnolia. Cute as in, I guess it's nice, but also I guess it's kind of a bummer. Then we get another Magnolia chapter, and we learn that Magnolia did not wake up Julian when she came upstairs after washing dishes with BJ, and Julian's a little annoyed about it. Magnolia has been left alone in the house for the afternoon because Julian is off running some sort of errand, and she finds BJ watching National Geographic in one of the living rooms, and so she settles down onto one of the couches next to him, and their hands touch, and it is everything. Okay? We get this memory from a vacation that the Parks family took when Magnolia was in school, and how I think they went to South Africa, and they were apart for 10 days, BJ and Magnolia, and it had felt like forever when they were got reunited. It was this big moment. They'd felt like they had been separated for so long, and Magnolia had ended up being outside of BJ's classroom and distracting BJ to the point where the teacher was like, just come in, and she'd wound up sitting in on BJ's final class, and they'd planned to sleep together pretty immediately afterwards, and BJ mentions how he'd wanted to wait just a little bit longer. They're talking about this memory, and he says to her, I had the sense that we'd do that and then we wouldn't be kids anymore. I loved being a kid with you. I was going to tell you before I saw you that I thought we should wait, but then I saw you. Magnolia goes, I'm sorry that if you did it before you were ready. And BJ says, I'm not. Probably my favorite night of my life up to then. And then after that, Dartmouth and the Loch. And then us with the tree last year. Magnolia goes, are all your favorite nights with me? And BJ goes, yeah. And Magnolia knows that all of her favorite nights have been with him too. And she suggests they make another favorite night, but BJ knows she doesn't want him to cheat, and that's not how they want to restart this relationship. And Magnolia's I don't actually care anymore. I think I just want you. But she leaves, and BJ is like, are you running off to find Julian? Because she's feeling rejected. And Magnolia goes, so what if I am? And BJ says, stay. Just stay. Like, sit through this discomfort, Magnolia. Unfortunately, Jordan returns in that moment, and Magnolia is crying. She darts off as soon as she sees Jordan. As soon as she sees Jordan, and BJ has to, like, explain to Jordan, and he pretends that it's just because she saw a polar bear die. Jordan is the worst. We find out what Julian's been up to during this moment. We go to a Julian chapter. Julian explains that being in the house with BJ and Magnolia is super weird, but he understands the vibe between them better. Not that he really cares, because he wants Magnolia for himself. He's trying to figure out where to hang Matisse's open window, a new acquisition that reminds him of her. He's a little annoyed with how obsessed she is about BJ and how her eyes go to him in every room. And he like sees them in a balcony, just like standing next to each other, and he punches a hole through the wall in his closet. He's not doing well. Magnolia finds him, and his knuckles are all bloody from punching a hole in the wall, and she like cleans him up, and she comments on how they need to work on his temper. Then we get to see where Julian was during the polar bear movie. It's very important. Rosen McMathen called. Bad news. Rosen is on the don't work with list. And they arrive, and she asks where her niece is, because Rosen's sister was their mother, Leisha. Which means, because Rosen is Irish. They're from like the Irish crime family. But it really justifies my feeling that Daisy is a redhead. Like, again, textually, Daisy is a brunette, but I don't believe it. She's a redhead, and I know it in my bones. Okay. We get more information about the Daisy's mom situation and how their dad was obsessed with Daisy, and Leisha had almost died giving birth to Daisy. Leisha had gone back to Dockland for about 6 months afterwards. The McMathens never have met Daisy. Hadrian made sure of it because the McMathens deal in people trading, which is not something that the Haites family deals in at all. That's like on their no-go list. And then Rosen McMathen makes some veiled threats about Daisy, about Julian's dog, and then about his girlfriend. And she talks about how she has eyes everywhere. And Julian is like, she's not my girlfriend. She has a boyfriend. I'm sure you've seen it. They're on the cover of all these magazines. She's just a girl I'm hooking up with. And he hopes that will be enough to keep her safe. And then, but it like makes him nervous. It like really puts some fear into him. And he immediately, as he's leaving this meeting, texts Magnolia to make sure she's safe at home. She is. That's the end of the Lake Como trip. They did not spend enough time enjoying the lake. I don't think. They never do. I think they were only out there for a few days. I miss it already. All right, that is actually going to be the end of this video, but I will say I have actually already filmed all the way to the end of this book, so all I need to do is edit it. I was planning to make this one massive video, but as I have actually started to edit this, I realize I have over 6 hours of footage, and it is just, that's too long. That's too long for one video, so I'm breaking this into 2 parts, but I do promise that the next part will be out quicker than the last, because I've already filmed all the way through at the end of this book, so I just need to edit it. So I actually imagine part 2, or I guess part 4, the final video in the Long Way Home and the Great Undoing series, will be out in the next couple weeks. So look forward to that. Thank you so much for being so patient with me, guys. I am hopeful that like maybe by putting this video out into the universe, it'll kind of stir things up and we'll get news about the next Daisy Haites books, because I'm eagerly awaiting it. This reread really made me like even more anxious for that final Daisy Haites book. Okay, I will see you so soon. Bye.